Hello, 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 hello. You actually made it into the thumbnail. You did. It did. It did. It was a very good thing. I could not do it. I could not have it there. It was, you should be proud. Hello. Hi, Astrologers. Hello, Xeno Time. Welcome back. Welcome back to see, hopefully, the conclusion of all of this. And look, for the first time ever, I have chat on stream. Hey Maury, good to see you. Look, it's up there though. I figured it out just like 5 minutes before stream started. It's very exciting and mildly terrifying, isn't it? Now it's on the screen. Someday I'll make a fancy overlay, but frankly, I'm really tired. I'm stressed out. I got a lot going on, so fancy overlay can wait. But for now, at least we've gotten this far. For last week, it was music on the loading screen. This week, it is chat is actually on the screen now. It's all very exciting, isn't it? Now I'm a real pro, exactly. You can get into Z's thumbnails by abusing Eggy's drawing repeatedly. This is also true. I have also learned this. I have not attempted the secret technique myself, but I believe that also makes you Z's reactive PNG. I don't know if Z has used a reactive PNG yet, but it makes like when Z does collabs, I believe that is the drawing that she sends people to represent her, like during our debut, if I'm thinking of the right drawing. Oh man, oh man. Are we ready? Are we ready to get back into this paper? Maybe I should like summarize what this was about, just for like a refresher, just in case. So this is a paper looking at moral licensing. Moral licensing is this idea that if you do a bad thing, or well, if you do a good thing, then that's sort of like, it's like moral accounting. Yeah, it's like moral accounting. So if I do a bad thing, or if I do a good thing now, that means it's okay if I did a bad thing later. Kind of like it cancels out kind of deal. Or I've been a very good person, which means that it's okay for me to do this bad thing. And there's kind of also where it's not usually talked about in reverse where you do a bad thing and therefore you need to do a good thing to cancel it out, but that's also kind of part of it. But yeah, moral license is like I'm a good person, I've done a good thing, and therefore I can afford to do a bad thing. Kind of like, when you're saving money. I saved money by not buying this thing, and therefore I can spend a little extra on this thing, but with morality. And this paper was specifically looking at that in terms of purchasing stuff. So this is like an economics paper, so of course it's in terms of like monetary whatever. And they were looking at purchasing towels, and they had essentially they've got like two different samples. And the first sample, they were looking at a group of people who first had they weren't exactly choosing between, say, an organic towel and so they don't really have a control group, which annoys me. But participants were given this choice, like, you can either get a towel that was made of organic materials, which theoretically is like a morally responsible thing because it's better for the environment, according to them, and get a little money back in addition to that towel. So we'll give you the towel and some money. Or you can pick a towel that both has organic materials and fair labor practices, and you won't get any money. So you're making a more ethical consumer choice, but you're not getting any money back. And their dependent variable is basically like, how much money were you willing to sacrifice to get the more ethical towel? And then, after people had made this choice, or, well, after people had reported how much money they were willing to give up to get the more ethical towel, kind of, they 30 minutes later asked them how much they'd like to, or would they be willing to donate to charity, yes or no, essentially, or like donate to a good cause, yes or no. Then later on, they also had another sample of people that, oh, right, and in that context, moral licensing would say, if you bought the ethically responsible towel, you would not feel the need to donate to charity later. So if you get the better towel, you'll feel less likely to donate to charity later. But their hypothesis was a little weird. For some reason, they thought like only the more like the towel that only used organic materials, if you bought the less ethical towel, you would be less likely to donate to charity later, which is actually the opposite of what moral licensing would predict. But I don't think they fully I don't want to say that they don't fully understand that, but the problem is they don't have a control condition here. They don't have an unethical towel, a towel that is both was both made with inorganic materials and like not ethical labor practices. Yeah, we're talking ethical and unethical towels again. Oh, and I have an update before we get into the results. So that's kind of what they're doing. And then they also had a second sample of people that were like trying to judge how likely people are to do something. Welcome, Fi. You're going to hear the words ethical and unethical towel a lot in this stream, unfortunately. I was considering on the thumbnail making like a good towel and an evil towel, you know, like with devil and angel wing, kind of like I did with my little Mothmen in the first thumbnail for the first part of this, but then Xenotime's flyer was too good to be true. Oh, that's right, I should explain the flyer in the thumbnail. If you weren't here for the last stream, or maybe you missed it, they're talking about something that they call dynamic moral licensing and static moral licensing. Welcome, Bushi. Unlicenses your ethics. Oh no. I'm sorry, I love that. But yeah, they're discussing like static versus dynamic moral licensing, but they never actually define what those terms were. They say they're well known, but at no point do they say these things at all. Like they never define these. There's no they're the only people that use these terms, static and dynamic moral licensing. I could not find anyone else, and in fact anything other than this paper, that use that terminology, and they never define it in this paper. Which annoyed me. And so we were talking about that on stream, and Xenotime was like, you know what? I'm at a university. They have an economics department. I'm going to make a poster, and I'm going to hang it in the economics department. And that is what happened. So that is hanging, that flyer in the thumbnail is hanging, or at least at one point was hanging in some economics department. Did you ever get any, like, did you check that email to see if anyone had responded? It's still there. That is wild. There are 3 copies. Oh my gosh, this gets better and better. I'm sorry, I don't know why my tracking on my right eye is being weird right now. Maybe I have bad lighting. I checked a couple days ago. Yeah, I actually might have an answer now. I think it seems like the reason they assume that this was so self-evident, but I, as psychologist, okay, to be clear, moral licensing is a concept that comes from moral psychology. So as somebody who knows a lot of moral psychologists, and as somebody who is good friends with somebody who wrote their dissertation on moral licensing, it seemed very unlikely that these were real terms that I'd never heard of that were commonly used here in reference to moral licensing. Like, it's not my specialty, but I know people who it is their, like, specific area, you know? So I was surprised I hadn't heard of it before. And it turns out that might just be static and dynamic, just sort of have these fixed meanings in economics, from what I understand, that psychologists don't use. They were just adding these like static versus dynamic to the term moral licensing, and they just assumed everybody got it because they were assuming that it was economists reading their paper, even though moral licensing is more of a psychology thing. So they were assuming that like this interdisciplinary thing of economics or economists using psychological concepts wouldn't go the other way around, where psychologists aren't using economic papers. It's weird. Time to put an eye patch over your right eye and become a pirate. It's true. This is the only solution. Do I have the energy to quickly whip up an eye patch asset? That's kind of tempting, I'm not gonna lie, but I don't actually know how to pin it to my model, so maybe I'll save that for another time. But anyway, the big update before I start reading. I've gotten no non-spam emails. That's a bummer, but it's okay, So I mentioned last time that I actually have a friend who has a PhD in economics. And I was like, after reading this paper, I was so like, well, reading the first half of this paper, I was so like, I can't tell if these people are doing bad writing, if this is bad experimental design, or if this is just an interdisciplinary difference. I feel like that's kind of the note that we ended on to an extent last time. So I went to my economist friend and I sent him the paper and I said, please tell me what is happening. Like, is this bad science? Well, not bad science isn't quite the right word, but like, are these people, does this design make sense? An excellent opportunity to use research hell. Like, yeah, when we were talking about research hell on Spy's stream, was that yesterday? time flies. I think that was yesterday. I was thinking of this paper specifically, in I think it was the very first circle of research hell, which was bad writing. But anyway, so, um, this is my friend. My friend who is an economist says he thinks that their tour Saturday I was on Sai's stream, right? And then Sunday I was on Fi's stream, and today is Monday, I think. I can keep track of the day of the week. I'm so good at the day of the week. I am the master of the day of the week. I think it's Monday. If it's not Monday, then I taught the wrong class today. Anyway, so I said to my economist friend, I showed it to him, and he said that he thought so to quote my economist friend, who will stay. Oh, good, it's Monday. Okay, good. So to quote my economist friend, who will remain anonymous for now, I think their design is fine, but their writing is pretty darn bad. Okay, that wasn't a perfect quote because he used some profanity in there, but that was his interpretation. I asked him about, like, I told him, well, I don't know, buddy. Like, they don't have a control group. How are they supposed to determine if this is a moral licensing thing if there isn't any, like, non-ethical products? And he's like, I don't know how you would have a control group. I talked to him, anonymous economist, very trustworthy. Welcome, Inks. Yeah, don't worry, this guy is a whiz. He's one of the smartest people I know. I don't trust. Okay, that's a lie. I have biases about economists that are completely irrational. I want to emphasize these are irrational feelings about economists. These are not based on rational thought whatsoever. Trust economists, but he's an economist that I think is acceptable, largely because he was raised by psychologists. The writing is pretty darn bad. What he actually meant was my eyes have been forever scarred. Otherwise he didn't seem to think it was that bad. Like, he didn't think a control group was necessary, but I very much think a control group was necessary personally. He also thought that the fact that the independent variable of how ethical the towel was confounded with getting money versus getting no money. He thought that was fine. Apparently that's a normal thing in consumer choice designs, which this is an economics paper that's using a consumer choice design, like which towel would you buy. So apparently that's normal. From a psychological training perspective, like being trained in psychological methods, I think that this is a very major flaw in this paper. But apparently from an economist's point of view, yeah, it is more realistic. That is true. It is more realistic. I'll give it that. Like, in terms of internal validity, it really hurts their ability to say that this is moral licensing, and that like specifically the ethics of the towel is what is causing the difference. Yeah, yeah. You can't see the underlying mechanisms. You cannot quite establish that the ethical production of the towel is what's causing the difference. You can't establish that here because it's confounded with, are the researchers giving you money, yes or no? But apparently this would be acceptable in economics, and you're right, Xenotime, it is more environmentally valid. Usually things that have more ethical production processes and use more like environmentally friendly ingredients do tend to cost more. So in that case, it's sacrificing its ability to establish causation, and it's sacrificing internal validity for more external validity. Yeah. For internal validity. We should start like giving D&D stats to papers into internal validity. I like the sound of that. That we should do that at some point. I'll have to add that to my list. Let's see, what else has he said? Wonder if things change if the timing of the money changed. Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, their dependent variable's a little weird. It's not so much like, I'm sorry, my Chinese philosophy brain made double take because I thought you said Tao instead of towel, and I was audibly. Nope, not Tao here, unfortunately. Here's a pot of $50, pick a towel to buy. Yeah, the way they did it is a little weird. Like, as a psychologist, this surprised me. It's not actually like how much money would you give up. There's like this choice of like, they give you a whole bunch of pairs of options of towels. We should have replaced journal impact factor with D&D stat spreads. I honestly think that there would be a lot of psychologists and like a lot of academics in general. We are a nerdy enough bunch that I think that we would actually like that. I think you could get people to like at first agree to like have that as a supplement to impact factor because there are quite a few of us that are like very stuck in our ways and kind of traditionalists with this is where things are, but I think start with that as a supplement and then slowly move away from impact factor until you get there. I think I'm gonna turn on a light. I think that might help with my blinking. Oh, and I broke my neck. Okay, there we go. But yeah, this is how they operationalized towel choice. It wasn't which towel do you want. In fact, the person participating never actually got to pick the towel they wanted. They essentially gave, which is another weird thing. They're talking about ethics and consumer choice, but they don't actually let the consumer choose which towel that they're gonna get. Because they do give them a towel. I've never seen an experiment where like it's pretty common to pay participants for participating in an experiment to compensate them for their time, but I've never seen payment plus here's a towel. That delights me. But yeah, here's the thing. Participants would see something like this, and they would see a whole bunch of pairs of towels where one is only organic, so it's the less ethical towel. It's not completely unethical, but you either get the organic towel and 12 euros. That's a euro sign, right? I think. Or you get the organic and fair wear towel, so it's both organic materials and the people who made it, like who sewed the towel and all that stuff, were treated well, and you don't get any money. And then they slowly keep lowering the amount of money that you get along with the less ethical towel to see at what point are you willing to give up the extra money to get the more ethical towel? That was their dependent variable. When did you swap over to sacrificing money you could get to get the more ethical towel? That was their dependent variable, which I consider kind of a weird way to do it, but like I think this is probably another like cultural, well, not disciplinary difference, between economics and psychology. Like we would do this differently, but my economist friend didn't bring up anything particular about this, so I'm guessing it's kind of normal to do it this way. Next time I'm doing a research study, I'm asking if I get a towel, right? This is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You remember, always bring your towel. Why is it done like this instead of making the less ethical towel cheaper? I think it's because it feels strange to imagine getting paid to buy a worse towel. Yeah, that's kind of like the limitations of the research study. Different people will deal with this in different ways, because the idea here is we want to make sure that your participants are spending real money. But we cannot actually ask participants to come with money and give us their money for the study. That's not something ethics boards would normally allow us to do. So typically the way that people deal with this is they say, there's a couple ways. The typical way I've seen this done in psychology is you give your participants, you say like, okay, for your participation in the study, we're going to pay you $5. You can give up some of that $5 to say donate to charity or to buy a towel, and we'll just give you whatever's left over. And I think it's kind of like that, because like, again, we cannot make our participants in our study give us money, but we can give them money and then adjust how much money they get. So they're still reducing the amount of money that they own, but it's not their money to start with. They're still sacrificing money, but it's like you're getting less money from us as opposed to you're giving less money to us. Does that make sense? It is a little weird, but it's a weird like limitation to the way that we do studies. So what do you do these days? Oh, I buy bad towels, right? They were making money buying these bad towels. Yeah, it is really strange to imagine, but it's just kind of like it's a limitation of how we do research. Imagine participating in a research money and that like you consent to participate in a research study and you sit in the study and then the researcher comes up to you and holds out their hand and goes, give me your wallet. I mean, like buying unethical towels. I really love this. I do think there's a limitation, since I imagine people who treat other people's money, they'll get differently from money that is just theirs. This is true. I believe there have been studies looking at like how you frame it. Like, is it that we're giving you less money, or we give you like there's People do seem to behave a bit differently based on whether you frame it as we will give you an amount of money at the end of this study and you're sacrificing some and we'll give you less if you take this certain action versus I give you this money at the start of the study and then you can spend some of the money I gave you. The way you frame it does affect the way people interact with it because people like their money. They're more willing to take a lower reward at the end than they are to give up some of the reward that they've already received. Got the word per minute spreadsheet set up to hopefully autopilot. That's impressive. Oh gosh. Okay. That means I should probably get going. Let's see if there's any other notable things that my economist friend said. uh So he was mostly just saying he doesn't think that he thinks the main problems with it was that the writers were just not communicating their ideas clearly, and it was clearer to an economist audience than a psychologist audience. But then I pointed out the p is less than 0.01 is highly significant, and they did one-tailed tests, and he said, what did he say to me? Where is it? Oh yeah, I said. I'll die on the hill if p is less than 0.01 is highly significant is just egregiously wrong. And he said, ha ha ha, yeah. And then I added also one-tailed tests. And then he said, wait, really? Oh God. How is that remotely justified? So he seems to think like most of this seems to be the design stuff seems to be interdisciplinary differences between economics and psychology. The confusion seems to come from the writing is not as clear as it could be, but the way they're doing statistics, even he has problems with it, so that's good. Descending deeper into research hell, it's true. Gonna keep imagining a secret underground bunker where they keep the unethical towels to keep them from escaping unauthorized and wreaking havoc. Yeah. So that was pretty much what that was my economist friends. Oh, and that brings me to the dynamic versus static moral licensing. I didn't know what those were. So I asked him because he's an economist and maybe he'd know, and he said static means within one choice. So this is moral licensing within one choice. Part of my moral, it happens within the towel buying choice, theoretically, at least as I understand it. If it's within one choice, the first choice they're making is the towel buying. And then dynamic means across sequential choices, so multiple choices that you make all in a row. That was how he was interpreting it. Yeah, like on one hand that parses, on the other hand they say that, didn't they say they're finding evidence for static moral licensing? But then when they do their analysis and from their study design, they're interpreting behavior across two choices as static moral licensing. But two choices, those are two distinct choices, so wouldn't that be dynamic moral licensing according to that definition? I don't know. Anyway. That's what he said. So like when he gave me that explanation, it made sense, but then when I thought about it relative to the like study that they're describing here, it stopped making sense. Yeah. It makes syntactic sense, not necessarily semantic. Yeah, it makes sense as like a definition and a distinction between the two, but in terms of how it applies to what they're doing in this paper, I don't think it makes sense. But I mean, I could be wrong. I could be misinterpreting what he means by choice, or like what one choice means to him as what it opposed to me. Like for me, choosing which towel and then choosing whether to donate to a good cause are two separate choices, but unclear if he would agree with that. The one paper that uses it, yeah, like that makes sense, but not within the context of Czech's notes. The one paper that uses it, that's kind of how I'm feeling about it, but I could be wrong. If I were to guess what's static and dynamic, where I wouldn't guess that, yeah, I wouldn't guess that either. But apparently, like, the way he phrased it was, you would need to have a lot of background to deduce that. So it seems like this is an economics concept, and because, at least to my knowledge, none of us are economists, it seems completely like I have no idea how you get that from that to us, but to an economist, it seems like he had no trouble figuring that out. He was like, immediately when I asked him, he was like, oh, this is what it means. So it seems like it's like one of those just jargony things, kind of, you know? Unfortunate, but it is what it is. Oh man, how far are we? Are we seriously almost half an hour in and I haven't started reading the paper? Well, to be fair, I was on topic. I was giving you additional information that I've uncovered since the last read. So I think that that counts, okay? Like maybe the words per minute for this particular stream is 0, but I think that this is still relevant. I'm not off topic. I'm not dilly-dallying. Yeah, if I were to guess what static and dynamic were, I wouldn't guess that. It's like it's moving and not moving and moving. I would agree too. Or like it's changing or not changing is kind of the right, the yap. Yep. I've been training with Psy lately. We'll allow it. Thank you, Mari. That is very kind of you. All right. So let's go to the results section. So we had ended last stream by reading this first section on the results, and I remember I hadn't intended to read this on last stream, but then I saw the phrase "We will speak of highly significant if the p-value is below 0.01," and I just blue screened for a minute there, and I was like, wait, I need to read this. But just in case, let's retread this a little bit. Just start from the start of the results section, just for the sake of, it's better that way, I think, right? Clearly. I don't know. We need the word count of your chat with the anonymous economist for word per minute's purposes, since oh, I would copy and paste my Discord logs, but I'm not gonna do that actually. You don't need to see that. I know, highly significant. And also they never tell you the sample size. I complained to him about that too, actually, and he said, so I said, they never say their sample size, or at least it's not in the methods or start of the results. I haven't finished the paper. He said, based on the design, I would assume 50, but I can't be sure. They don't talk about it in the analysis. There are some things in the supplemental materials towards the bottom that suggest that they had 100 participants, which might mean 50 per condition. But I'm not super sure. It does bother me that they don't give us their sample size. Like, that's kind of, I think highly significant as a term that also belongs in research hell in limbo. I agree, though honestly, I would consider that bad writing or just generally misusing statistics, because I'm not sure if the fact, like, I think it's very easy to think highly significant is a meaningful phrase if you don't fully understand p-values, and there's a lot of work out there showing that a lot of people who use statistics don't know what a p-value is or how it works. So I'm willing to say that that's probably not intentional bad stats. It's probably more bad stats out of like not fully getting what a p-value is. We'll speak of kind of giving significant no cap for real of the p. That's a very new way of saying marginally significant that I haven't heard before. It's 0 words per minute. Oh. Okay, let's get reading. I do have to work tomorrow. So let's get reading so that I'm not like on this stream for another 3 hours like last time. Though I'm looking at the progress bar here and that's not promising. Okay. Oh, is that because you can't see the whole thing that I'm looking at? Should I? So I want you to be able to see the whole thing that I'm looking at. It's because I adjusted this to make room for chat. Oh, but then that's kind of like small. Well, okay. Whatever. Let's go with this. It's fine. Okay. So, this was their first one. Static moral self-licensing. A lot of the stuff at the bottom, I would say you're 66%. Yay! I'm not as behind as I thought I was. Great success. Okay. So static moral self-licensing, which again, according to my anonymous economist friend, this would mean moral licensing across a single choice. Which doesn't make sense to me, because moral licensing is I did a good thing now, so I can do a bad thing later, which feels like moral licensing kind of has to be across 2 choices. It kind of has to be dynamic if he was interpreting the difference between static and dynamic correctly. Anyway. We hypothesize that static moral self-licensing takes place, that is, subjects treat orthogonal ethically relevant aspects as if they are substitutes in product choice. So if see, this is also what gets me, because these aren't orthogonal, because their product organic is both organic and fair, what's the phrase for it? Fair labor? Fairware. So these aren't orthogonal because they have one of the same characteristics for ethics in it, right? It's not orthogonal. These things are not orthogonal. Like, product organic is both organic and fairware, whereas their control is organic. Like, that's not orthogonal. They have 2 of the same characteristics. I think what they're trying to say, okay, I think I understand why they think this is static right now. Exactly, one literally contains the other. That's another problem they don't have any fully unethical towels here. They don't have any unethical towels here. They have a slightly ethical towel and then a slightly more ethical towel, but they don't have any unethical. We have no baseline here. We have no baseline whatsoever. But I think I kind of get what they're saying is that, like, as long as you have at least some ethics in there, that should be the same. It doesn't matter how much you have, but also that, I don't know. Do you ever have a thing where you feel like your brain is like this close to understanding the thing, but it's just not quite reaching over the gap? It's like when you're lying in bed and you're just trying to reach your phone or something, and your fingertips are just barely not touching whatever you're going for. That's kind of how I feel right now about trying to understand what they're communicating. But even fair work versus organic is not orthogonal at all. There's a reason Whole Foods exists with both, and there aren't many places with only one or the other. I agree. I think the reason they're saying orthogonal here is that one of them is concerned with the treatment of people, whereas one is concerned with the treatment of the environment. And in that case, they're thinking that they're ethically distinct. But sometimes you can get away without a baseline control if your comparison groups are intensity 1 and intensity 2. Yeah, but I don't think that works here. Like, I understand what you're saying, Fi, and I do think that's the case. And I have definitely run studies without a control group before, absolutely. But in this case, they're specifically talking about, does moral licensing occur, which would require, the whole idea of moral licensing is I did something good now, so I don't have to do more good later, or I can do something bad later. And here, that would imply that there's something above and beyond just how people would normally act. I bought a towel, and therefore it affects future things. So, like, for me to be sure that moral licensing has to occur, yeah, exactly. It's so easy to, right? But that's also what's interesting. When I talked to my economist friend, he was like, I don't see how you could have a baseline here. And I'm like, what? How do you, like, it's so easy to just take away all the ethical aspects of the towel, have it just be a normal towel with synthetic materials and horrible working practices for the people making it. That's just a normal towel. That's like such a clear baseline, but for some reason it didn't seem self-evident to him, which maybe this is, again, like a disciplinary difference in how we view things. I don't know. Yeah. But also, like, in terms of, like, the concepts being orthogonal, I can see why they think it's orthogonal, because it's in two different domains, people versus the environment. But if you look at theories of moral psychology, which, again, is where this moral licensing concept comes from, moral foundations theory would view this as orthogonal, because it would say, treating the workers correctly is addressing concerns about harm, whereas treating the environment well is addressing concerns about purity. So it would treat those as if those are two moral concerns that are in completely different areas of morality. But if you look, and also those aren't actually orthogonal. If you look at the correlations between moral concerns about harm and moral concerns about purity, they are correlated. So those are not orthogonal. They are related to one another. If you're more concerned about more harm, you're also more concerned about purity, and vice versa. It's not like a super strong correlation, but they are routinely correlated. And then the other major theory of morality, Kurt Gray's dyadic theory, would say that both of these are not, they're concerns about harm. Both of these are about harm. Exactly. That's kind of what Xenotime is saying. Like, well, it's a little similar to what Xenotimes is saying. They're both about harm, is what that theory would say. So both of these concerns about fair labor and about or like environmentally friendly materials are both concerns about the same underlying concept about, are you harming somebody or not? So from the perspective of moral psychology, I would not call these orthogonal ethically relevant aspects. Like, I get that why they would think that, but from the literature that came up with the concept of moral licensing, I would not consider these two things orthogonal. Which I haven't thought about it enough to say whether that is harmful to their study, like whether that actually matters for their study design, but I do think it matters for the concept of, is static moral self-licensing a thing? I don't understand why that, yeah, oh wait. Yeah, surely for this to be useful data, you would need the unfair one, because just organic one bundles people who are fine with that they did something good and people who don't care in the slightest. That's true. See? See, astrologers, that's a great point. Like, if you don't really care, you're just gonna take the cheaper towel no matter what. It's not that you thought you were doing a good thing. You might not have even paid attention to the materials used to make the towel. That was just the cheaper option available to you, right? Also hurting me, right? Maybe some sort of mental accounting of harm made them orthogonal. People separate mental environment and people in two different mental cases, like they often do in behavioral economic experiment. I don't know. Like, I'll, the bulk of the research in moral psychology would say that these are not orthogonal. Like, the thing is, there is mental accounting of harm, and if you're concerned about harm in one context, you do tend to be concerned about harm in another, all else held equal. Like, there are factors that influence this, like who's getting harmed. Is it somebody that you like or somebody that you hate? And in that case, the correlations can get a bit wonky. So I do think there is, like, these are not this, like, harming people or unfair labor practices, and also non-environmentally friendly materials are not this, like, that concern is not the same thing, but orthogonal implies that they're entirely independent of one another, and I would not say that's the case. But again, like, I'm coming from this from a psychology perspective. Yeah, people separate mentally environment and people in two different mental cases, like yeah, like they often do in behavioral economics. Yeah, like, I can see why you would go with that, but like, orthogonal implies they're completely unrelated. They're just not related. They're not related enough to for me to say that they are exactly the same thing. They're definitely separate concepts and separate concerns for sure, but they are related concerns. And that's what gets me about them saying this is orthogonal. And yeah, yeah, I do think it's, again, like, I think it's because these are economists dealing with psychological things, and I imagine I'm having a hard time understanding why they're doing what they're doing here and how they're conceptualizing it, because I'm not an economist, and I imagine they probably had to read a lot of psychology to come up with these hypotheses, because, again, this is a psychological concept. This isn't from economics. This is from psychologists. And they probably had similar problems trying to interpret the papers that they had to cite for this and to come up with this hypothesis, if that makes sense. So it could just be poor communication between disciplines. This would be another pro of having a control. Like, mathematically, 0 is orthogonal to everything. And it's just, yeah, I do think I do really wish they had a control in here. I really, really do. I'm not dissing it's like what Phi was talking about on stream yesterday. Like, I am not convinced by this paper. Like, could this be true? Yes. I do think this absolutely could be true, but with the evidence that they presented so far and their experimental design and, like, theoretical concerns, I'm not convinced by this particular evidence. Yeah, interdisciplinary stuff is really hard, especially because, based on, if I remember correctly, the only authors on this are economists, right? And so they didn't have yeah, Department of Economics, and then Department of Economics. They did not have a psychologist to consult on this. So this isn't really, I wouldn't call this interdisciplinary, because they're citing an interdisciplinary a concept from another discipline, but this isn't like people from different disciplines working together, you know? Maybe Feimer should have "I'm not convinced" on it on a shirt. I would like that. I would like that a lot. Okay, anyway, sorry, where were we? We expected that subjects in, we've read exactly one sentence that we already read last time. All right. Therefore, we expected the subjects, the paper isn't disciplinary, but the topic, I agree, the topic is interdisciplinary, but I do think they would have benefited from having a psychologist on this paper. But that can be difficult. Like I said, me and that anonymous economist friend, we've talked about cooperating on a paper before, and just like trying to come up with a research question alone, much less a hypothesis, much less a method, much less anything like that. There were so many interdisciplinary differences between us that we could just not settle on even what type of question we wanted to ask. And like, we get along well. We have known each other for over a decade now. It's not that we're unfamiliar with each other, or that we haven't talked to each other and we're not used to how each other talks, but like, the disciplinary divide is unfortunately very real, and it does hurt communication. Where were we? Therefore, we expected that subjects in product organic would pay less money to ensure fair work something controlled manufacturing standards than product control as reflected in the lower switch in the price list. So lower switch in the price list, let's see. So you guys have good chemistry. Oh no, a third discipline. Unfortunately, I don't actually know any chemists. I don't know if I'd say we have good chemistry. We're good friends. We're absolutely good friends, but that friendship often takes the form of him bullying me. Friendly bullying. A lot of my friendships are based on people teasing me, now that I think about it. Luckily, V theorem's not like that. There's a little bit of that in V theorem, but it's well, all of the teasing is in good fun. What anyway? I'm a very bullyable person, unfortunately. I'm very good at dealing with it, but it's very easy to tease me. Not you though, Maury. Not you though, Maury. I'm sure that says nothing about me. Certainly not. Certainly not. Surely Maury's bullied me at some point. You also enable me, which is also just as dangerous. This being teased is a topic for future research, yeah. Please be nice to me. I'm just a small moth. Okay. As reflected in a lower switch point in the price list, which would imply that they'd pay less money to ensure... Wait, a lower switch point? Oh, does that mean like a lower money switch point? So I thought a lower switch point would mean they'd switch over, they'd be willing to give up more money to switch to the organic and fairware. But I think they mean lower switch point as in they'd be willing to give up less money to switch to the organic and fairware because their towel is already at least somewhat ethical. Which again, I would love to see a control group here. Where is the switch point for the control group? Like, is this just... Is option A your control because it's the cheapest option that gives you... there's just a lot. I think at this point, they switch from one to the other in terms of dollars spent. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. It's just like, what counts as lower in here? They didn't really operationalize that very well. And I think this, if they say this is consistent with what they found, then we can use this to interpret what they meant. But our finding, the hypothesis was validated. So the product control, the average switch point was 5.73 euros. So for the ethical towel, they started switching to the organic towel at 5.73 euros. Wait, I'm confused. Oh, I hate this. This doesn't make sense. Because if it's about the switch point, when they switched between the two, then how do they have separate estimates for organic and control? Because this is about when they switch from control to organic. This is about the price point where they would switch from the control towel to from the less ethical towel to the more ethical towel. In which case, both of the levels of the independent variable are accounted for in that choice. So why are there two different estimates of switch point? That doesn't make sense. Oh, I hate this. I don't hate the paper. I just hate how confused I am. That just to clarify, I don't hate the paper. I don't hate the authors. I hate how confused I am. Okay, let's check again how they operationalized their... So product control were ethically relevant products were randomized into two treatments. They chose between ethically different yet otherwise comparable towels, and I assumed that this was the treatment. I assumed the treatment was which towel they were comparing. In the price list, they weighted money in receiving a more conventionally produced towel against receiving no money and a towel that fulfills a more ethical set of production standards. So, yeah. The subjects chose between towels in neutral colors in a standard medium and a standard surface weight of... I don't need to know this. I don't need to know this. What I need to know is what the difference between the two treatments are, and they're not telling me what the difference between the two treatments are. Oh my god. I think that this section is just really poorly written because I cannot parse what they're determining in this section. It's possible that product control is comparing an ethically neutral towel, or like, an unethical towel to the organic towel, and then product organic is comparing the organic towel to the organic and fair wear towel. But at no point do they mention an unethical towel. They describe it as if both conditions are doing exactly the same thing, where they're comparing between the less and the more ethical towels. So I have no idea how to interpret this because they're not fully describing their conditions here. They're just not. They're not describing the full thing. Straight to research hell. See, this is what I meant by bad writing. This is firmly in the bad writing layer, and it's so in the bad writing layer that I can't tell if it qualifies for other layers outside of, the strange statistical, choosing inappropriate statistics. I can solidly say it falls for that, for using a one-tailed test here, which doesn't make sense. Is there supplement? There is supplement. There is supplemental materials. We'll have to check how much information they have in the supplement. Should we go there now? Or they have an appendix. Oh, here's the appendix. This is their supporting information. Okay, product control, switch point with... Why are they doing one-tailed tests? Again, why are they doing one-tailed tests? There is no justifiable reason to be doing a one-tailed test here at all. And again, my economist friend agrees with that. So this isn't just me as a psychologist. This makes no sense. This makes no sense to me or the economist. First, we look into the details of behavioral. Econ department has a tail shortage. Oh no. When I listen, first switch point. So they're dependent variable is when they start switching, but this still doesn't tell me anything about the difference between the product control and the product organic conditions. It doesn't. Okay, here's their study. Okay, they gave us their study. So we can see. We present the instructions from product control and product organic. The instructions are presented on paper sheets covering a sheet. Wait, so is it going to tell us which is which? Is it going to tell us which is which? We would ask you keep... So the production line, in the course of the study, will choose between two towels which differ in their way of production. Okay, and that should be the same across both things based on how they described it. En route from the cotton plant to the final product, a towel passes several defining certified cotton, defining fair wear. Your task in the study, you choose a towel. You'll receive, in any case, a towel made of cotton, size that will handed out to you when the study is ended. All towels will have the same. Okay, so you're gonna get a towel at the end of the study. On the back cover of sheet is a list. You'll have a row between option A, you get the towel with conventional cotton without fair wear certification, conventional cotton with fair wear certification. Product control, you choose between conventional towel and fair pay plus organic towel and product organic. The allow to price the fair pay. It's not what they're describing though. Yeah, so because here certified organic cotton, the label is relevant to the... Okay, so they have the organic cotton. Do they at any point though say conventional cotton, conventional cotton, conventional cotton? So both option A and option B here are conventional cotton and then with and without fair wear. Do they have a case where it's They do have a control group, guys! They explained it really badly, but they do have a control group. Guy was right, and what I was speculating earlier was correct. They do actually have a control group here, but they never describe it in the actual paper. You have to go to the instructions they gave the participants in the supplement. Okay, so this is product control. You either get an unethical towel. So this is not organic cotton and it's not fair work. So this is their control. Normal towel, unethical towel versus a towel that's only ethical in terms of fair wear. In the organic, you get an organic towel without fair wear and an organic towel with fair. It's all coming together. This makes more sense. This is a study that actually makes sense to me. Okay. Okay, now we can comprehend what we're reading. It's making sense now. Now we can interpret what's happening. Okay, so here we are finding that when they are comparing, so this is their product control. And what this says is that when participants were given the choice between an unethical towel and a slightly ethical towel, they were willing to give up. Is it designed to? I know, I'm sorry, Astroactivist. But it's so funny. It's like, I know, this is like that Boys Love fan, the Fujoshi brain scan paper. It's like all the things that made it make sense were hidden on the supplement. The paper itself made no sense, but once you read the supplement, you're like, oh, but like the paper, which nobody reads this. Who reads the supplement? Nobody reads the supplement. It's like the same vibe. It's like, and this happened with Phi recently too, didn't it? Like you had another paper that you were reading on Stream Phi where it was like the paper itself made no sense, but then you went to the supplement and then it made sense. Hey, Scarling Mikhailor, welcome. We finally figured out what's going on. We're finally understanding. Boys Love was not the next word I was expecting. It's a really interesting paper. It was looking at brain activity in fans of Boys Love. And it was really interesting, but it had the same problem as this paper. The main text of the paper made no sense, but the supplement, exactly, the supplement should not be for crucial controls. Exactly. Do you get twice as many views when people have to read supplemental and you get double ad revenue? I wish. But no, this is +1 too, so they paid to publish this. Like, this paper's in +1, so they paid the journal to publish this. They will never see a cent from the journal. They gave the journal money. So no, they're not getting anything from anyone reading this ever, like in terms of money. Okay, so when you're comparing a control towel, so are we watching Boy Doing the Deed and Graphs? Economists Are Wild? No, we're not. Thank goodness. No, I don't want to. I would say I don't want to get demonetized, but I'm not monetized, so I guess it doesn't matter. I'm now a believer in important shit in the supplement being in research held too. I agree. I put important stuff in the supplement, but that was because it wasn't important for understanding that, like, I considered it important, but like I didn't have the word count and it wasn't like pivotal to understanding the study. But like this is pivotal to understand. You cannot understand this paper without the supplement, and that just upsets me. We regret to inform you that Phi and Psi are struggling. If you get demonetized while not being monetized, they charge you. Yeah, YouTube's gonna be like, where's my money? You'll get there eventually. Soon you'll be able to spend months on a video and get paid $1. I cannot wait. I spend months on a video for no money at all. I'll spend months on a video for $1. Okay, anyway. So people are willing to give up more money to switch from the unethical towel to the ethical towel than from the slightly ethical towel to the fully ethical towel. So the jump from an unethical towel to a towel with any ethical value at all, you're willing to give up more money. You won't give up as much money. But the thing that interests me here is they're not really seeing what they think. That they were kind of almost interpreting that if the towel's already ethical, then you shouldn't be willing to switch. Like, if it's already somewhat ethical, that should already fulfill your need for moral licensing. So we shouldn't be seeing them giving up any euros at all, which is kind of what they were leading up to. I mean, it is true. They are finding that going from unethical to slightly ethical is a much bigger, or well, not much bigger, but it is like you're willing to give up more money to go from unethical to ethical than you are from slightly ethical to more ethical. And that makes sense to me, but you're still giving up money to get a more ethical towel when your towel's already somewhat ethical, which is not really consistent with how they've been describing this. They kind of were almost predicting that the mean of the product organic comparison should have been around 0. Which is interesting. They're still willing to give up money for additional ethics in their towel. Which is not really what they were hypothesizing. But in product control, but wait, Did they only do only fair wage? Yeah. Product control is comparing like a standard towel to a towel with fair labor. And product organic is comparing an organic towel to a organic towel with fair labor. So the only thing that's actually varying within the conditions is whether it's fair labor or not. And then across conditions is, why isn't this an interaction? Oh, it's because they're dependent variables measured in a weird way. That's why they can't do an interaction here. That's why. Yeah, this is all starting to make sense now. I'm getting it now. Now I understand why my economist friend was, I don't see a problem. Actually, no, I don't, because I don't think he looked at the supplement. How did he know it wasn't a problem without looking at the supplement? Was he might have just been assuming that this is how they did it. And maybe this is like a normal way to do things to write papers in economics, and therefore he was able to catch it and say, oh, this is fine, whereas we non-economic plebes or whatever had to go and read the supplement to figure out what the heck was going on. Thank you for mentioning the supplement, by the way. Okay. This is a decrease of 30%, which is it's not highly significant. That's not what it means. If you're gonna show me the effect size, what is your effect size? Okay, actually, so I have the mean switch point for one condition and the mean switch point for the other condition. Give me the standard deviation so I can calculate a Cohen's d for this, dang it. I want to calculate Cohen's d. Give me the standard deviation. Give me an effect size. If you don't say highly significant means nothing. Something's either significant or it's not. It's yes or no. If you want to tell me that this is an impressive thing that you found, that this decrease of 30% means something, give me an effect size. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's go to the next one. But at least, like, this is now making at least somewhat more sense. So my problem with the study design has been mostly addressed by looking at the supplement. I'm just mostly concerned about now I'm just concerned about the statistics. The difference between meaningful and exactly, it's that thing we were talking about yesterday on your stream as well. This appears meaningful, but is it significant? Is this something that is a real impact? Yeah, we want numbers. You're an economist. This should be right. I mean, they are Germans, so hopping across to Amsterdam isn't impossible. Knowing research looks the same across our disciplines. It's true. Oh, please, we oh no. I'm gonna go journey to Germany and just like say, what's your effect size? Except this was published a long time ago. This was, well, not a long time. This is what, 2017? 2020. Yeah, this was only 5 years ago. How was this published 5 years ago and they're using one-tailed tests and calling a p-value less than 0.01 highly significant? I cry inside. I thought economists were better at statistics than psychologists, but I think that might just be the economist that I happen to know. No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. In fact, let's not bother the authors at all, especially because we know that one of the authors has unfortunately passed away. And also they do seem to be. It's the statistics I'm worried about. I'm no longer as worried about the study design. Like, it's not how I would do it, but it seems pretty valid. I'm mostly concerned about how they're conceptualizing of the statistics. You know. Okay. So next one. Do uninvolved people expect static moral self-licensing to take place? So they've found evidence. So this is within one choice. They have found that people, this makes sense why they're calling it static now, because this is one choice. But the thing is, it's not the same people it's two different groups, independent groups of people making that one choice. I guess I could see how they're interpreting that as within the same choice. Like, because these are two people, they're essentially they're making the same choice between a less and a more ethical towel. And we see static moral licensing in that people who bought at least a little bit of ethics are giving up more money. And once they have that ethics, they're not giving up as much money. So they don't feel like they need to compensate as much. But no, wait, isn't that the opposite? Isn't that the opposite? If moral licensing is, if you do an ethical thing, you don't feel the need to be more ethical in the future, shouldn't you be willing to give up more money in So I've done a more ethical thing here, so I can do it. It might work. It might work. I'm having trouble wrapping my head around it. I'm just gonna ignore that 2.5 words per minute. I'm gonna pretend I didn't see that. Okay. If you do a good thing now, you don't need to do a good thing later. So, moral licensing, static moral licensing would say, if I've done something good, I can afford to be good. So if oh yeah, okay, that fits. Yeah, because this is, yeah, I've done a more ethical thing by choosing organic. I don't need to do a more ethical thing. Yeah, no matter what, this towel already is somewhat ethical, so I don't need to have to give up as much money. Wait, but this is the switch point. This is when they switch to the organic. Okay, yeah, no, that fits. Okay, never mind. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. This is static because it's within one choice. They're comparing two people making similar choices. If they already have some ethics in their purchase, no matter what, the towel is already made with organic cotton and all that stuff and is good for the environment. They don't feel the need to give up as much money because they've already got a somewhat ethical towel. Here, because they're willing to give up more money to get a more ethical towel because the first towel that gets them the money, it has nothing ethical in there. Okay. I am somewhat convinced by this. It's still not how I would run the study personally, but I am at least somewhat convinced that they have a significant result here. Is this meaningful? Is this a meaningful difference? I don't know, because they don't tell me the effect size. But I am at least somewhat convinced that this is a real different. Like, real feels weird because, like, statistics this could be a type 1 error, we don't know. But I am convinced that they have found a difference here. It's highly significant, not just I'm gonna bite something. Okay. All right, okay. I'm struggling, but like now that I think we've got a handle on this is making sense. Okay. I do wish they had an effect size. I do wish they weren't like clearly not really understanding the statistics that they're using or like the limitations and considerations of the statistics that they're using. But like this is making a lot more sense now. Okay. Subjects know the instructions that sewing the towel is a very difficult production step, that growing cotton, because the people involved in ecological consequences differ. Nevertheless, they attribute very different. But that doesn't, like, this is their argument for why it's orthogonal, because these are two very different ethical dilemmas. But at the end of the day, like, if we go according to dyadic theory, they both boil down to harm. And maybe sometimes that's harming people and sometimes that's harming the environment, but it's still just harm at the end of the day that they're using to determine whether this is ethical or not. So dyadic theory of morality would not say that these things are orthogonal. And based on a bunch of data for moral foundations theory, which would say these are two different aspects of morality, those aspects of morality are still correlated with each other. So I get why they're saying that, but it's not orthogonal. Watching this made me feel smarter last time. Why am I not making sense of it? It's funny how that works out, because like I was not making sense of this last. I couldn't understand what was going on last time. It's like we swapped. I'm sorry, Scarling Michael, or I stole, or Mikhail, I stole some of your brain cells today. I'm sorry. I absorbed them. I'll give them back when the stream's over, okay? Sorry. Fever, I know. I'm stealing brain cells. Okay. Do uninvolved people expect static moral self-licensing to take place? So, see, this is another thing. I don't, like, did the people understand what static moral self-licensing was? I guess they're not, I guess it doesn't matter if the ordinary people understood the exact jargon they're using, as long as they understood the concept. So, they're just saying, do unrelated people think that people really will be willing to sacrifice more money to go from unethical to slightly ethical than from slightly ethical to more ethical? This is why I empathize with students, why I'm a harsh grader on the writing. If the person you're trying to impress is losing their hair trying to understand your work, it doesn't matter how amazing your results are. Hard agree. hard agree. Writing, like, it doesn't matter how smart you are, how brilliant you are, how hard you worked on your study, how incredible or novel your idea is, or how, like, world-changing your discovery is. If you cannot communicate it to other people, no matter how impressive your finding is, no matter how cool your study is, if you cannot communicate what you found to other people adequately, it's effectively meaningless. Oh, you can choose to call how to call me. Everybody calls me something different anyway. It doesn't bother me. Okay, but I like to call people what they want to be called, you know? So like if ever possible, I try and go along with I try I, yeah. But yeah, communication is like it's like what I tell my students in my stats class when we're talking about how to write up statistics. A lot of the time they're focused on like writing out the statistical part, and because that's the main thing that like they don't understand, and that's the main thing that they need to practice is writing out the statistics parts, you know, like T on however many degrees of freedom is blah 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 blah, and that's what they focus on. But in doing so they forget the most important part, and I keep telling them this is the most important part. You need to tell people in plain comprehensible language what you found. The statistics are important, don't get me wrong, because they're like how you back up what you're saying. But if you don't tell people in plain language that people who aren't familiar with stats can understand it, if you don't use that, like, the statistics are meaningless. How do you pronounce your name? My name is Mylin Aikman. That's how you pronounce it. Or Akamon, I think. I've also pronounced it Akamon in earlier videos, but I've learned I didn't know I was mispronouncing my own name, so Mylin Aikman, but I think everybody calls me Mylin. Myelin, like the myelinated sheath on a neuron, those collections of like fatty substancey thing that allow impulse or like signals to travel quicker down the axon of a neuron. They speed up neural signals. Yeah. Rigor is nothing without a vessel through which you can communicate what you found to others. Exactly. There's no point in doing science if you don't tell people about it. And even if you tell people about it, if they can't understand what you're saying, then there's no point in saying it. So science communication is vital, and that's even within scientists, you know? Aikman, professor name. Akamon, greater demon. Let's just make it interchangeable. Call me whatever you feel like. Call me Aikman if you think I'm being smart. Call me Akamon if I'm causing you mental scarring or pain. Call me Mike or Michael. It should be close enough. If you're sure. Okay. All right. I will do that. All right. Okay. Let's keep going so that my words per minute doesn't fall to like less than 1. My words per minute on this stream is going to look like a p-value. Okay. Do uninvolved people expect, so yeah, this is, can like lay people, just people off the street, can they predict this result? Yes or no? We hypothesize that for at least 3 reasons, this phenomenon might not be, so, oh no. Oh no. Are they hypothesizing the null? Are they hypothesizing the null? Our data from Belief Organic demonstrates that subjects were not aware of the effects of moral self-licensing. Estimates for switch points are at any, and virtually, they hypothesize the null. They hypothesize, that's not how this works. That's not how this works. Failing to reject the null is called failing to reject the null because we cannot support the null. We cannot accept the null because we're not testing the null. At last accepting the null. But no, yeah, like they're saying, look, we supported our hypothesis because we didn't find a significant difference. That's not how this works. Did they take AP stats like I did with a teacher who just talked about golf all day? Well, I mean, it's a weird concept, and I don't think we talk about it all that much. I feel like this is an underemphasized concept in statistical instruction. Like, we don't really talk about it all that much, but the type of statistics that we do, and the type of statistics they're using, they are specifically using, wait, why is this t-test 2-sided and that t-test 1-sided? Oh, this is fishy. This is fishy, y'all. Okay, so it is easier to reject the null with a 1-sided t-test than it is with a 2-sided t-test. They used a 1-sided t-test for the hypothesis where they were expecting a difference. So they used the type of t-test that's easier to reject the null when they wanted to reject the null. And they did a two-sided t-test, which is the one that makes it harder to reject the null when they were expecting not to reject the null. Hey, hair day! Gotta beat those p-scores somehow. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is that would indeed be a scuff. It would only verify that you are indeed streaming. Scuff is essential to prove it. Referring to read time. That's true. That's okay. Yeah, I mean, if they would explain to me why they went with a one-tailed test up here, like I can think of no reason this is the case. My economist friend can think of no reason why they would do a one-tailed test up here. Like, we don't know why. If they had at any point justified this decision, like, this was already kind of weird that and the weirdest thing too is that even if they did a two-tailed test, they still would have rejected the null here. That's the weird thing. They didn't need to do a one-tailed test here. They would have still rejected the null. Based on this p-value, a two-tailed test would have had a p-value of 0.004. That's still less than 0.05. They still would have rejected the null here, and they still would have had a highly significant result if they had done a two-tailed test. So why is this one-tailed? I mean, I guess maybe... Is there supplemental on the supplemental where they justify it? Okay, I think I possibly have an explanation, because this is a mistake, or maybe mistake is the wrong word, but this is a thing that I've seen some of my undergrads in my stats class doing. This was a directional hypothesis, and ostensibly one-tailed tests are for directional hypotheses, when you have an expectation of which direction your effect is going to be. But the standard in psychology, and apparently economics, if my economist friend is correct, the standard in psychology and economics is normally, even if you have a one-tailed hypothesis, you should do a two-tailed test, because it's more conservative. You're less likely to get a false positive. So they should have been doing a two-tailed test here, but maybe they thought it was okay to do a two-tailed test here, or a one-tailed test here, because they had a directional hypothesis, and no difference is kind of inherently a non-directional hypothesis, so they thought it made sense to do a two-tailed test here because it's non-directional. They might not have realized that by choosing a one-tailed test where they expected a difference, and a two-tailed test where they didn't expect a difference, they were skewing the stats in their favor. It is really sketchy, but the weird part is, too, like, again, even if they had done a one-tailed test here, they wouldn't have found a significant difference here anyway. Like, that's the weird thing. Like, why did they switched the type of test they were doing? And I think it's probably based on the type of hypotheses they have. Like, so I think that this wasn't done out of malice. I think it was based on the hypothesis, because, like, and I don't think this is p-hacking, because, again, like, if they had done a one-tailed test here, they still would have failed to reject the null. If they'd done a two-tailed test here, they still would have rejected the null. It's just... It's weird. I think we're taught that, yes, one-tailed is for directional hypotheses, but you have to have a very good reason to believe your effect could only go in... Yeah, exactly. And that's how I teach my undergrads, too. Like, you should only ever do a one-tailed test if you think it is straight up impossible for the effect to go in the other direction. And, like, yeah, do they have to, like, say there was analysis in advance? Not necessarily. So, like, they did lists. No, I'm thinking of a different paper where they talked about analysis plans, but the norm would be, well, in psychology recently, there's been a move towards something called pre-registration. So this would have, if this was a psychology paper and they wanted to do this, they probably would have had to pre-register this, which is you write down before you do the analysis and you save it on a website where you cannot edit it and other people can access it, so they can see your original analysis plan. So if you change it, people can tell. I don't think that's really a thing that people in economics have been talking about. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why the heck they would do that. I genuinely think it's the hypothesis thing. Pre-registration, the good Joseph Joestar, correct. But if this was pre-reg, that would at least have a reason for this. Yeah, and you would want to state a reason why you're doing that in the pre-registration as well. The more I look at this, the more I think either these people don't understand statistics very well, or, and possibly a combination of these things, they had their statistics training many, many, many years ago, and then they just never updated their They never, like, looked to update how they did their statistics from what was the norm a very, very long time ago. That's, like, the best explanation I can come up with that isn't actively malicious. But then again, the results aren't really lining up with actively malicious either. I didn't know pre-reg wasn't really a thing in econ. I think some economists probably do pre-registration, but pre-registration really got its major start in psychology, and psychology was kind of like the start of like these open science movement, at least as far as I understand it, or like it was the first place where it really caught on, and a lot of other disciplines have been like slowly catching up. Yeah. Yeah, again, I don't think this is malicious. I just think it's like, it's, I don't want to say bad statistics because I feel like that also implies intent, but these are, to put it in Phi's language, this is not convincing statistics. This is not even like baseline level of convincing what we would normally hope for, unfortunately. Or at least there's a lot of oddities. Psychology was the start of open science and everyone else is catching up a psychologist. I think it's where it really caught on. I don't know if we started it, but it caught on there for reasons that are actually kind of make psychologists kind of look bad, actually. I could talk about that another time. I could do a lecture on the whole why we started doing pre-registrations, why we started caring about this, and like the events that led up to this. Like it's kind of a wild ride. Yeah. But you are right, that does sound very much like I'm just tooting my discipline's own horn, but really it's actually a rather embarrassing story about why we were the first ones, or at least the first ones to really start getting into it, at least to my knowledge, which my knowledge is from a psychology viewpoint, so I might be wrong about that. I would like to hear it. I'll definitely tell you about it sometimes. I'll organize. I've got lecture slides for it already, so I'll prepare the lecture slides for this channel, and I would love to do a whole like this. Maybe I can drag Psy into this because Psy has a fair amount of knowledge of this. Yeah, I bet she would help. Yeah, it was quite a tale. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I'll ask Psy if she wants to do like a collab, or if she's willing to look over my lecture slides to see if she has anything to add, because I know that she has a fair amount of knowledge in this area too. Anyway. Okay. So again, just to be extra clear, the type of statistics that they are using, the branch of statistics that they are using, and the type of statistics that they are using cannot test to see if two things are the same. It can only say there is enough evidence to say these groups are different, or there isn't enough evidence to say these groups are different. So this does not, they made a hypothesis that they cannot support with this type of statistics. They're interpreting this as these two groups are not different, but that is not what this means. A non-significant p-value here only means you don't have enough evidence to say they're not different. It doesn't mean that they're the same. So this is just a misinterpretation of what t-tests can and cannot say. And the physicist in me who used significant equals 5 standard deviations was horrified, lol. Yeah. I was telling my class about that I was talking with my stats teacher friend the other day, and I was telling him about like how, because of talking with you and talking with Phi and stuff, like I've started to learn like there's a lot more nuance to how like we interpret effect sizes and things like that. Psi and Phi have similar names, and I always take a second to distinguish which is being mentioned. Yes, this is true. I think that's a fairly common problem. I think I've already told this story once before, but it's still very funny to me. When Phi first reached out to me for a collab, I was going by Psychome. We all go by our full name, Psidary Phylum, but we don't. Yeah, it's true. But yeah, when Phi first reached out to me, my YouTube channel was still called Psychome, and Phi was like, oh no, we have Phi and we have Psi, and I can't call you Psi because Psidary is already Psi, and I can't call you Psi because that would get confusing. Can I call you Hime? And I'm like, I'm not a princess. Please don't call me Hime. Okay, my name is now Mylan. Mylan is my name now. That's why I'm Mylan, because I needed to come up with a name so that Phi didn't start calling me Hime. Phi was very kind about this, by the way. I'm not saying that Phi would have called me Hime after I told him not to. That definitely isn't the case, but like it was a problem that needed solving, and I'm all the more glad that I solved it since I became a member of V Theorem and joined the Phi and Psi collective. Just me. Yes. I think that was the first conversation we ever had. I think I'd already on my channel said that my name was M. Aikman, except I was pronouncing it M. Akamon at the time because I was mispronouncing it. But I didn't know what the M stood for, and then Vi came in with that. I'm like, okay, I need to find out what the M stands for right now. And that's the story of how I became Mylan. I'd been, let me tell you, Vi, I'd been spending months, actually years, trying to figure out what the M stood for, and I could not figure out what the M stood for. And then, like, when this problem popped up when we were talking, I figured out what the M stood for within, like, 45 minutes. After, like, years of mulling it over, the thought of some people starting to call me Hime was enough to get me to figure out this within 45 minutes. I can't believe Biden size name dispute catalyzed an entire year-long reaction. It's incredible. I know, it was pretty amazing. It's very funny how that worked out. I wonder how Sai would react if we started calling her Dere. You were that disgusted by the idol suggestion. It's not you, Fi. It's not you. It's a gender thing. Okay. I was like, I can't have people calling me princess. I'm not a woman. Please don't call me princess. even if the Hime was just the H in psych and IME for the end of anime, like, I still knew people would interpret it as princess. You may be a princess in the realm of knowledge. I am no princess. If I'm anything, I'm a prince. That might also be Sai. Anyway. Where were we? I can sense my words per minute just dropping. Or just Dur, like a lot of people she raids in Dare. Or Dur, yeah. Sideri going by Darian, Phylum going by Lum is just so freaking... If I do a stream on April Fools, I'm referring to you as Dare and Lum. But Prince is not Hime, yeah. I could be OG. OG. And I'd have to explain why my name is OG. Well, you see. Not Prince, not Princess, what about Pringles? I like that. Pringles. Lum just reminds me of the character from Urusei Yatsura. Drawing Fi, the neutrophil, in a tiger print bikini with horns. My words per minute is already rock bottom. Who cares anymore? Oh no, this is a mess. Only cells. The Lumberry from Pokemon. Lum reminds me of Unit Lumen. That's nicer. I like that. We should see if, like, if we pull one of Fi's arms, does he start glowing like a light bulb? That would be a fun animation to do, actually. Anyway, paper. I have work in the morning. I need to remind I have work in the morning. So we gotta get through this paper. Because I don't want this to turn into a 3-stream thing. That's too much. 2 streams is already more than I'm terribly happy with. 3 streams would be... I would quit. I would graduate. That's a joke. Okay. I wonder where's Black Bunny. Okay. Anyway, okay. Does the word noble differentiate gender? I don't think so. I could be a noble. I'm willing to be a noble. Call me noble. Call me noble. Okay. Alright. Anyway. Okay. Do uninvolved people... Okay, this is the one we already talked about, and we talked about how we can't really, like, this... Thank you very much. I bow to you as well. Yeah, we talked about how we can't really interpret this, because you cannot interpret the null. We can't interpret this. This is not what they say it's finding. You can't interpret the null. This is effectively statistically meaningless. It doesn't... We have not learned anything from this. Alright. Dynamic moral self-licensing. So this is the... Does their choice with the towel, does that influence their choice to donate to charity? Or donate to a good cause? At the end of the study, about half an hour later, and what I really want to know is what happened in the half an hour between the towel choice and this choice. Mylan, the noble of knowledge. Yorokobe shonen. Yorokobe shonen. I love it. Fate references are always welcome in this chat. Yeah. Okay, anyway. Subjects in the product treatments were asked whether they wanted to share their show-up fee of €2. So they were being paid €2 to participate in the study, regardless of which towel choice they made. And they could either share their show-up fee of €2 with refugees from a local refugee camp. So they could donate part of the reward that they would get for participating in the study to this refugee camp. The Holy Grail is the definition of static moral self-licensing. No, you see, the Holy Grail is a wish granter, so that means I can use the Holy Grail to learn the definition of static moral self-licensing. Do not use the Fate Holy Grail for that. That is a horrible idea. Especially the one from Fate Stay Night and that timeline and Fate Zero. Do not use that Grail for anything, much less something like determining determining the definition of moral self-licensing. Yeah, okay, yeah. I watch Fate, yeah, and I don't need to moth-splain to you. You know what I'm talking about. That's fair. And Fate lore is kind of infamously dense, so. Okay, anyway. If static moral self-license, subjects did not know beforehand that they would be confronted with this decision. If static moral self-licensing has spillovers in time, would that just be dynamic moral self-licensing? Oh, no, wait. Subjects in product organic should less frequently share their show-up fee with products. And then no, this is literally dynamic moral self-licensing. No, wait, it's not, because the towel that they get is random. They didn't actually get to choose the towel they get. They just got a towel. This study, man. I just... okay. I think I'd rather use the monkey's paw over the Holy Grail. That's saying something here. This is like a control for the dynamic case. No, this makes dense. This makes dense. I like it. I know you meant to say this makes sense, but this paper does feel kind of dense to me. I'm not gonna lie. It's control for dynamic licensing, yeah. And this is what we observed. 72% of subjects were willing to share in product control, and 56% of subjects are willing to share in product organic. Key eagle... Guys. Do you see the problem here? Do you see the problem here? Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay. So to explain to those of you who aren't as stats pilled, remember how we said earlier, it's easier to find a significant effect with a one-sided test. That is part of why we never do one-sided tests unless we think it's impossible for it to go the other way. Was it possible for this to go the opposite way they predicted? Absolutely. There's no reason maybe they had a strong prediction, but there's no reason it shouldn't be possible to find the opposite result. They have no excuse for using a one-sided test here. And before I was like, okay, that's weird that they're using a one-sided test, but I'm not gonna get too mad at them because they still would have rejected the null with a two-tailed test up here. So I was like, whatever, okay, that's fine. Here, look at that p-value. Significant p-value is less than 0.05. This is only 2,000 places away from a non-significant p-value. If they had done what is the norm, if they had done a two-tailed test, this would not have been a significant difference at all. If the direction is part of your hypothesis, then don't do one-sided since you could be wrong. That's the whole point of testing it. Exactly. You don't want to miss if you're wrong, right? If you do a one-tailed test and it goes the opposite direction, even if it's a major difference, you'll still miss it. You'll still say nothing happened because you can only see in one direction with a one-tailed test. Here they did a one-tailed test, which makes them more prone to type 1 errors. It was barely significant in the first place, and if they had done a two-tailed test, which is the norm and is the standard, this wouldn't have been significant. They wouldn't have found a difference here. Okay, now I'm upset. Now I'm upset. Before I was one-tailed test, I'm kind of getting the ick from it, but I'll let it slide because this would have been significant anyway. this doing a weird thing that they have at no point justified doing. Like this, I cannot stress how unusual this is. And again, I've confirmed that this is not the norm in economics either. My economist friend was getting very like weirded out and almost kind of upset that they used a one-tailed test. Like he seemed deeply upset that they used a one-tailed test at all. And here, this one-tailed test, which again is not the norm in psychology or economics, is what made the difference between having their hypothesis supported and not. Oh, that's upsetting. That's upsetting. I was rooting for them. I was getting on board. I was really getting on board with this paper. Like, I know we ended last time on a bad note, but I was starting to be like, oh yeah, okay. Like, I may not think their statistics are incredible, but like, this is somewhat convincing. I can still be convinced by this. I just think they're communicating it not too well. Yeah, I just, hmm. I would not, if I was a peer reviewer on this paper, even now that I know before I said that, like, I know I was waiting for a reason, but no, didn't mean it like that. Yeah. Like before last stream I said if I was a peer reviewer, I wouldn't have recommended this for publication. I had been kind of changing my mind about that. I would have been like, you need to change, like, I would have given revisions. I would have, or suggested rather, revisions, like, you need to change how you're talking about statistics and just, like, change all your tests to a two-tailed test. And I would have been like, this is fixable. Like, this is fixable. It doesn't change your conclusions. I just want you to do, you know, like, the current standard of how statistics should be done. But this here puts me back on the side of, yeah. This isn't PloS. Yeah. Yeah, the supplemental made so much fall into place. Yeah. I'm sorry, Phi. For my economist friend that I talked to, he saw it was in PloS. The first thing he did was he saw it was in PloS, and he said, let me see how he thought about it. PloS 1 is already a very mixed signal for econ papers. So he seems to suggest that PloS 1 lets some econ paper, like, sometimes you get really good econ papers in PloS 1, sometimes you get not great econ papers in PloS 1. That seemed to be what he was trying to communicate. And this seems to be one of the ones that is not so great, unfortunately. Sorry, Phi. I'm sorry. Should I even read this? I don't really want to read the rest of their conclusions because this is not, I would not consider this a significant effect. I just wouldn't. I guess let's read it anyway. As subjects in product organic could expect to leave with higher income than subjects in product control because of the higher cost of the organic textiles, they may have even been more inclined to donate. See, they're literally saying right here that this could have reasonably gone in the opposite direction, which is additional reason they shouldn't have done. They're admitting that a one-tailed test does not make sense here in the very sentence immediately after saying they used one. This is a justification for exactly why they shouldn't have done what they did. Oh my gosh. Oh boy. I'm distressed. I'm not gonna lie. Oh, man. We can conclude that the authors did something really good and felt a moral license to write this paper. And that would be dyadic moral licensing, too, because those are two separate choices. Oh, man. Oh, man. I will say I have learned some stuff from this paper. I do think some of these effects might hold up if this isn't like an overall red flag. And I have learned more about how economists think about things and what dyadic and static are in an economic context. So I am coming out of this paper with more knowledge, I would say. So, like, I'm not saying that this paper is like a waste of time to read. I think we are learning things from it. Just not quite what or as much as I had hoped, but we are learning things. We are absolutely learning new things from reading this paper, and therefore it's not a waste. Right. Looking at estimates from the two belief statements, there was again no significant difference in estimates of willingness to share with refugees. And see, again, where they're not predicting a difference, they do it too. Well, again, that can be explained by just basing their number of tails on their whether their hypothesis is directional or not. So that is again explainable. And again, like it doesn't matter if they did that with this p-value. It doesn't matter if this is a 1 or 2-tailed test. They still wouldn't have rejected the null here, so that doesn't actually make a difference. Yeah, it's absolutely not all for naught, but their handling of stats is mega yikes. Hard agree. Hard agree. They really should have gotten like. I mean, it could just be that they just didn't realize that they didn't really know, like, that maybe they just weren't up to date on modern standards and statistics and they didn't realize it, or they just generally didn't realize that they, how much they didn't know about the statistics they were doing. So, like, this isn't necessarily, like, intentional neglect, but I really do wish that they had gotten somebody who was more up to date on modern standard of statistics and like modern practices and just statistics in general, and ask them to consult on this paper, you know? Like, I really wish, like, this one-tailed test thing that they're doing, my undergrads in my intro to stats class know not to do this, you know? Like, this is basic stuff. Yeah, it's not necessarily malice, but it is irresponsible. Yeah, I think it's irresponsible. But it's possible that they didn't know that it was irresponsible too, you know? So, like, it's possible that if they knew what they didn't know, which of course it's very difficult to know what we don't know a lot of the time, if they had known that they were not up to date on this, it's possible that they would have sought out help. And I would like to believe that that's the case. Oh, man. Oh, man. In summary, although the effects of moral self-licensing with regard to specific ethical dimensions are pronounced within decisions and over time, which I think they can say that there are effects within decisions and over time. They did find it in the middle of the results. I can drink in America now. Birthday! If I'm interpreting that right, happy birthday, Astra! I can't believe you're spending your birthday listening to this. So basically they picked the wrong method for the issue they picked. Sorry, I had my eyes on something else you had to guess from your comment. Pretty much, yeah, like, or well, they were using statistics in a way that that has high risk of leading to misleading results, Mike. Like, that's basically, they were doing statistics in a way that makes it very likely that they would get, or much more likely than we're generally comfortable with. Yeah, what an excellent way to ring in a birthday. It's some kind of way to ring in a birthday, and I get that it's not like a big birthday where you live probably, but like in America, like that's kind of a big deal birthday. And you're starting your big deal birthday listening to me getting angry about statistics. I'm honored. Thank you. Congratulations. I hope that you get to do something nice for yourself today. Here, it's 1 a.m. here, so it's not really spending it. Yeah, I don't know. Still though. We're almost done. I can see the discussion. The discussion is within sight. Anyway, let's get through this. But happy birthday! Oh, that's wonderful. Can I put on some sparkle there? Happy birthday! Sparkles for your happy birthday. Okay. All right. Let's finish this. Let's finish this, because soon it will be time to feed the creature. All the partying is tonight. Yeah, that's fair. That's when the partying should take place traditionally, I would say. All right. Okay. This occurs even okay. So the effect. So here's the thing. They say pronounced differences. It says effects that are pronounced. I don't know if that's the case, because like some of these effects were very close to non-significant, and also they didn't tell me any effect sizes, so I have no idea if these were big effects, if they were small effects, and they also didn't give me enough information to calculate the effect sizes myself, so I can't. Are these pronounced differences? I don't know. I don't know, and they didn't give me enough information to find out. Like, they're significant in some cases, yes, but that significance, depending on which method. For some of the significant differences they found, those differences wouldn't be significant if they had used statistics in what I would consider a responsible way, you know? So, like, I don't even know if I'm convinced that all of their differences are real. Maybe they are, but I'm not fully convinced. And then to say that they're pronounced on top of that, I wouldn't say that when you haven't shown me any effect sizes. Like, maybe they have effect sizes and they're not showing me. but I'm not seeing any. This occurs even though uninvolved parties did not anticipate their effects. So they're saying these effects exist, but people wouldn't guess it. You know. This occurs even though uninvolved parties were monetarily incentivized and could earn more money from making accurate guesses than from a flat payment. So, like, even though these people who were trying to guess what the participants would do were given more money if they got the guess correct, they still couldn't get it right. They're about as pronounced as Mile and Szech. I'm not even gonna try and pronounce that again. I keep forgetting to look up how to pronounce that. But yeah, they're about as pronounced as Mile and Szech. Which is to say, I'm not even trying this stream. Oh, hello, Mr. Oh, look at the time. You have a very good sense of time, Mr. Kib. I need to go feed the kitty for just 1 second, okay? I will be right back, because if I don't, he is going to eat me. And I don't want to get eaten, okay? I will be right back. The missile has an alarm system. Hey, Water Knight! Yes, the missile is here. He is yelling at me. I'm gonna put my loading screen back up, so be right back. I'm back. You heard Mr. Kitty? Oh, I'm so glad. He's a good little guy. Hey, Cleonia. Hello. Welcome back. I'm back. The creature, la creatura, or el creaturo? I don't know. He's been fed. He has acquired his sustenance. Tonight's flavor is chicken. Happy boy. Good little man. He's very sweet. Okay. Anyway. Okay. All right. Let's finish this paper. I have chocolate-covered pretzels waiting for me when I finish this paper, so I'm somewhat motivated. More than somewhat, I'm quite motivated. Okay. Where were we? Here. This occurred due to many subjects' beliefs were far from the correct answer, such that they did not earn any additional money for this task. And they described how this was determined up above. 27% of subjects earned money for their estimates. Potentially, subjects in belief treatments merely indicate that they consider morally appropriate and do not figure in the effects of moral self-attribution, which makes sense. Like, a lot of people are not great at, you know, okay, so, like, I talked about a bit about this in my Dungeon Meshi video, but, like, we don't all have exactly the same moral code. Like, there can be some pretty wild differences between what people consider morally right and morally wrong between individuals, across cultures, like, between groups, like, all that stuff. Like, this is, like, a pretty well-known thing. So, but a lot of people don't seem to be aware of that. Like, one of the sort of prerequisites for considering something a moral belief is that people believe that this is a universal thing. And that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody shares it, but they think it's, like, universally true that this is a moral thing or an immoral thing. Which is another reason, I remember last time we were talking about, they didn't measure if they thought protecting the environment was morally important, or if workers' rights were morally relevant, which is another reason I think this maybe isn't so much looking at moral self-licensing specifically, because they never tested whether the participants thought that these were moral issues, and that's not something that is, like, not everybody thinks these are moral issues. So to an extent, I think even the authors were not really accounting for the effects of moral self-attribution or even variability in perceptions of morality. No, they tried to use politics as a proxy for that? Yeah, kinda. Did they? I don't remember if they measured politics, did they? Or, like, factored, like, because they're not using politics anywhere in their analysis at all. Did they measure politics? thought I know we talked about it. Political rights of workers. Oh, they completed questionnaires on political preferences. Okay. Oh, that's how they occupied them for half an hour, but it doesn't say. They did ask people about this is so I think they measured it. They measured it, but they didn't use it in their statistics. They didn't use this in their statistics. They measured it, but it was just a thing that went in the middle of the towel task and then the refugee camp donation task. This was just how they filled time. I don't think they actually used this data. Could they have used this data as a proxy for whether people saw these things as moral issues? Possibly. But they didn't. Like, t-test cannot do that. They were doing all of this as t-tests and chi-squares, and they cannot do that with t-tests and chi-squares. They cannot control for things with, at least the way that they're reporting them. Yeah, no, they didn't do anything with it. They didn't do anything with it. They could have, but they didn't. Wait, where are we? Where's the discussion? Why are there more results in the discussion? So does this imply, as a result, what answer did it end up answering, if any? That's a good question. That's a great question. I'd have to think about that a bit more, but I guess it doesn't matter if it's moral. It's just like, if you did something that you think is nice, do you feel like you don't have to be as nice later, or that you can be a little selfish later? It doesn't have to be in the moral domain. So I think maybe we might have learned something a little bit that, like, if people feel like they've already done something that's a little nice, they don't feel the need to be as nice later. And if people think that what they're doing is already a little nice, they're not willing to sacrifice as much to do something that's even a little bit nicer than that. I think that we can say that they have shown evidence for that. Whether that evidence is that this is about morality, they do not have data to say that this is about morality. They don't have the data to say that this is moral licensing, because they never measured whether their participants saw these things as moral issues. And there's quite a large portion of populations that do not view these things as moral issues. Yeah. Yeah, they don't have anything to confirm that these were seen to be moral matters. Exactly. So we don't know if this is actually moral licensing. We don't know if this is moral licensing. It could just be, like, general, like, karma, I guess. Like, I did a good thing and therefore I can be a little selfish now, which is kind of, it's like the same concept as moral licensing, but it's not specifically morality, if that makes sense. Like, maybe to them that's not a meaningful distinction. Like, maybe the distinction between something that is kind and something that is morally virtuous, or the distinction between something that is selfish and morally repugnant, is not meaningful to them. That's possible. Unironically, how I treat eating Oreos, what does that mean? Oh, like, I did a good thing today, so I can treat myself with Oreos kind of deal. You took the stairs to, yes. That's how I treat a lot of things. Like, I went into work today. And therefore I can buy myself lunch. You know, like, I do similar things. It's really just like that kind of like accounting, just in the realms of, like, doing nice versus bad things. It's not necessarily a moral accounting. It's just the general ledger of, like, I did a positive thing, which means I can do a negative thing, or I don't need to do a more positive thing because I've already done a kind of positive thing. I already did like a 2-mile walk today, so I don't need to lift weights. I don't think that they're actually studying moral licensing. I think they're studying something that's definitely related to it, but they can't call it moral licensing because they don't actually look at morality in it. They're assuming morality, and they're assuming their participants' moral beliefs, which is not something that I think is a good idea. You know, I think I noted this when we were reading through the introduction, but there are a few, like, big names in moral psychology and moral licensing And they didn't cite a single big name, at least like in modern moral psychology. They didn't cite a single modern moral psychologist in their introduction section that I recognized, at least, much less one that specialized in moral licensing. And I wonder if that has to do with how they missed out on measuring morality at all. They just like were not, the little psychology they did read was really out of date and from people who aren't kind of known for their work in the moral area, which is it can be hard to find relevant papers outside of your discipline. It can be very difficult. So maybe they just didn't stumble across that area. Maybe they just weren't using the right keywords, which seems unlikely if they know the term moral licensing. But I don't know. I worked out yesterday in the morning and woke up early today. I'm going to stuff my mouth with sweet cake for lunch. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the equivalent of what we're talking about here. Morality is completely irrelevant. It's just balancing the health scales or something, you know. I got 10,000 steps today, so I could buy myself a donut. It feels like this is kind of more on that level than the level of morality, if that makes sense. Which doesn't mean that this is irrelevant to moral licensing. It's just we can't confirm or deny that this is moral licensing. It might not be at the level of morality, and we have no way to tell because they didn't look at that. Okay, in the following we discuss our... Wait. By the way, not just an example, I do that yesterday, today. Oh yeah, no, I didn't doubt you. Like, the other day, what was it? Yeah, no, like the example, I did a lot of walking last Thursday. I got well over 10,000 steps last Thursday. So on my way home, I bought myself some donuts. That was not hypothetical either. That was a real thing that I did. If I'm calling out you, I'm calling out myself too. And I'm calling out Fi. Well, Fi kind of called himself out. I think we're all kind of Xenotime as well. We're all calling ourselves out. So at that point, it's just solidarity. Right. Many subjects believe subjects in belief control underestimated the willingness to pay in product control group, but did not under. Why are they doing a two-tailed test here? Because based on the theory that this is based on the type of hypothesis, they're choosing one or two-tailed based on whether they had a directional or non-directional hypothesis. This should have been a one-tailed test. I don't know what they're doing anymore. I cannot explain what they're doing. It's something I actively catch myself doing and doing it anyways. Same with falling for yeah, me, yeah. Okay, let's go to the discussion. In the following, we discuss our results. First, we demonstrate robustness by controlling for socio-demographic variables, personality traits, and attitudes towards refugees across. So now they're in. Why are they doing new hypothesis tests in the discussion section? And why not include control variables when you first did this? Wait, and why are they saying t-tests? You can't do control variables with a t-test. What were they doing? What is happening? What is happening? Every time I think I've got a handle on this paper, they throw me a curveball. I want to go home. At what point can we just abandon this paper for the sake of our sanity? Okay. Second, we discuss whether self-attribution is critical to our result. Self-attribution. For this purpose, we run 2 new treatment. Why are you introducing new studies in the discussion section? Who does that? That is not what the... And also, I want to clarify again. I didn't mention this before because it wasn't relevant yet. We hadn't gotten to that part of the paper. The best time was last session. The second best time is now. You're right. So like, I didn't mention this before, but when I showed this to my economist friend, he actually went through the entire paper. Like he skimmed through the entire paper, and I had not done that. And he said, he kind of foreshadowed this to me. He said, why are they introducing, where's the exact quote that he said? Something along the lines of, Also, are they introducing new treatments in the discussion section? So this is not just like a norms difference between psychology and economics. This was weird to him too. I hope someone specialized in this picks this up and reworks it with better practices. That would be good. That would be nice. You can finish it. We're learning from their bad example. Yeah, I guess this is an example of necessarily like not the best way to communicate your results. Traditionally, the discussion section is for discussing the implications of their results. You absolutely do not introduce new results here, nor do you introduce much less. Like I have admittedly introduced a new result in the discussion section, not as like this is a new hypothesis test, but more as a like here's like just to like say reviewers, this is not what you think it is. Like if a reviewer is going to criticize it on this thing, here's an analysis showing that it's robust to that. And I think my advisor made me move back that to the results section, but like you do not put results in the discussion section, much less introduce an entirely new study in the discussion section. That is not what this is for. And that seems to like I was wondering if this might just be a difference in like standards for writing styles. Psychology uses APA. They're clearly not reporting their statistics in APA format. This is not APA format, so maybe this is just a different format and that's why it's organized a bit differently to what I'm used to. But again, like my economist friend was surprised and confused by this as well, so I don't think that this is the norm in economics. I think this seems, based on his reaction, to be weird for economists as well. This whole paper is just weird. We discussed whether for this purpose we run two new why? Why? Oh my god. We discussed the potential effects of decreasing attention in subjects, and that's the problem when you have a study that takes this long. We try, like, my training has been like, try, if you can help it, not to have a study more than 15 minutes because people's attention goes away. Their study is longer than half an hour. So sometimes weird isn't bad. Sometimes, yeah. There are many cases where I think weird is good, but in this case, I don't think this is one of those cases. And an alternative interpretation of why subjects pay less for certified working conditions in product organic. Why this is a bad strategy. Why would you give your reviewers a reason to so this was another thing that Phi put on that what was it, academic circles of hell, or like whatever, research circles of hell, was not trying to kill your not trying to break your hypothesis. In other words, like not accounting for alternate explanations. They are providing their own alternate explanation without testing it or ruling it out. What are they doing? What is happening here? I genuinely don't understand what's going on. What are they doing? What are they doing? I don't want to be here anymore. Oh no. Okay. Okay. I thought we were almost done. But now, first subjects were read. And how many? Again, no sample size. I think that was the killing blow, yes. I'll give this another 30 minutes. And we'll see how far we get. This is also the case for product treatments. Nevertheless, a concern might be that treatment effects may be driven by differences in age or economic background. Reassuringly, Table 1 demonstrates that this is not the case. So they didn't actually control these things. Oh yeah, you're using the traditional definition of awesome. I love it. They didn't actually control for these things. They just tested to see if they didn't differ between conditions, which again, this is not, you can't do a hypothesis test. You cannot hypothesize the null. You cannot interpret the null. Like, it is reassuring that there weren't demographic differences, but significant demographic differences between conditions. That is reassuring. But one, this is not how you do control variables. This is not how you control for variables. This is completely irrelevant. At best, this establishes that their conditions didn't differ on these things significantly, but that doesn't mean that they didn't differ. It just means it wasn't a big enough difference to be sure it's a real difference in the populations, which in this case doesn't make sense because they're not looking at population. These are t-tests. So they were looking to see if they randomly assigned participants to their control group and their treatment group, right? This was the normal towel versus the organic towel, and then normal towel versus the good working conditions, and this is the organic towel versus the organic plus good working conditions. And they're making sure that the demographics of the participants who are randomly assigned to the control groups do not significantly differ from the demographics of the participants they're trying to establish that these participants are roughly the same. They're trying to establish internal validity by saying the random assignment succeeded and our two conditions are not meaningfully different on any of these variables that we think matter. Which, again, none of these variables have... Like, what is Machiavellianism again? I know I checked this the other day. It is potentially something, like, that's not how you do that. I have seen people do this before, but they said they were controlling this, and this is not how you control for things. They're, like, describing what they're doing. Machiavellianism is the name of a personality trait characterized by manipulativeness. I'm reading Wikipedia, sorry. Manipulativeness, indifference to morality, lack of empathy, and a calculated focus on self-interest. So there is some morality baked into this measure of Machiavellianism, but like, they're still not measuring if the people think the specific issues at hand, organic materials and fair labor practices, are morally relevant. They're not measuring the bit of morality that's actually relevant, and morality is not the only part of Machiavellianism. Also, dang, these are very, very heavily male-skewed samples. Yeah, it's not that this table is inherently bad, but the context does not accomplish what they're trying to do. Exactly. This is not accomplishing what they think it's accomplishing. It's accomplishing something by saying, like, our two samples weren't meaningfully different, but it's not accomplishing controlling for these things. It's not saying... It's not a way that I would have done this. And I don't think it's necessarily the best way to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. Does this sort of analysis have a place in research? Yes. Is it the best way to do what they're trying to do? I would not say that it is. But all of these are two-sided t-tests, so that's nice at least. These are all two-tailed tests, so that's nice. Subjects have similar opinions on whether Germany should support refugees fleeing war. So this is kind of nice for the second thing in terms of like differences in donating to the refugee camp. Again, this is not actually controlling for these things, but there isn't an obvious difference in baseline level support for refugees between the two groups, which is somewhat reassuring here, but like still it's not addressing the concern that they need to be addressing here. This is not addressing moral beliefs. Regarding personality traits, we elicit measures that might influence ethical decisions. Also, not that this matters here because none of these are significant, but they're not correcting this for multiple comparisons. Oh, but this tells us now how controlled Mylan is in their language, because like the last thing anything wants to do is read a very flawed paper. Yeah. It's not fun. It's kind of fun for content, but it's not fun. I kind of honestly, this is kind of a sport to me. I'm having more fun, I think, like, I am having more fun than I probably should be, honestly, but it is frustrating. It is absolutely frustrating. It's kind of like watching a horror movie and yelling at the people on the screen not to split up. That's kind of what this feels like, you know? But now at least we know their sample size. They had 100 people total, 50 people per condition, that's a decent sample size. Like for a t-test, 50 people per condition, that meets the minimum requirements for the central limit theorem. We don't know if this is enough statistical power because we have no idea what kind of effect sizes they were expecting here. But like, it's not awful for a 2-cell design. Like, it's not awful. Like, would I like a bigger sample size? Yes, but do I have major concerns about the sample size of 150 people per condition? Not really. Like, this isn't... I would like if they had more for certain, but this isn't like a major red flag either, based on the number of people per condition, so I'm not going to fuss too much about that. So they measured personality traits that why might influence? Have you like... Okay, let me keep reading before I get worked up. Machiavellianism encompasses a variety of worldviews and actions characterized by a general disregard for people to increase personal gain. So I guess this is fairly relevant here. Has been found to correlate negatively with ethical orientation and decision making. Ethics. Is that a philosophy journal? Moral, political, and legal philosophy. That's a philosophy journal. Like their enthusiasm for studying a psychological concept while citing almost no psychology papers is kind of fascinating. Like, frustrating, but like, this is a concept from psychology. And they're not citing any moral psychologists. Maybe they cited 1 or 2 in the intro, but like, it's just weird to me. So like, is moral licensing also a thing in philosophy? I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, it's specifically... Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it has a presence in philosophy, but it's mainly a concept in psychology. Yeah, maybe it telephoned through philosophy. That's also possible. They do cite at least one psychologist in the introduction. They cite Bandura, Albert Bandura. Question, where can I send ideas for future streams if you accept requests? I don't want to interrupt the talk of the streams much with these. You can drop me a suggestion on Twitter. I think I have an email address on my YouTube page. You can send things there as well. I'm happy to look at suggestions. I can't promise that I'll go along with them, but I'm more than happy to take a look over them and consider them. Absolutely. Okay. Machiavellianism has been possibly linked with love for money. Okay, management decision. I haven't heard of this journal, management decision, but management is closer to psychology. For a while, a lot of social psychologists were actually the primary, or were a major source of faculty for management programs. Fun fact. And economic opportunism. Okay, here is one that is published in a psychology journal. Journal of Applied Social Psychology, also known as JASP. Nice. But if they're reading psychology, why aren't they going for Machiavellianism and not more traditional measures of morality? This just seems needlessly, like, I guess it's related to morality and it's related to money and stuff like that, but there's more direct measurements of morality. Sacrificing money to improve the working conditions of unknown people without personal benefit would therefore not constitute Machiavellian behavior. But why Machiavellianism? Why not a more general measure of morality? I do appreciate that Machiavellianism is associated with, like, more monetary selfishness, but, like, why not measure directly moral beliefs about the specific issues that you're looking at here, like, in addition to Machiavellianism? Because morality around money certainly plays into this, but what about morality around the environment and working conditions? They think it sounds cool because it's in the Dark Triad. Maybe. The second trait of interest is agreeableness, as it is elicited in the Big Five. So this is a psychology measure, the Big Five. It's a pretty famous personality measure. This is a real psychologically validated measure of personality. Just checked. It seems you're a victim of YouTube not showing email address in your YouTube channel. It's happened to many YouTubers I've subscribed to, if not all of them. Let me grab my email address. Let me get that for you. Oh, wait, there it was. View email address. Oh, what have I done? I've done horrible things. I've done horrible things. I'm gonna put spaces in this, in the place of the @ and the dot, just in case. That is my email. Feel free to send me things there. I don't check it super often, but I try and check it somewhat regularly. Right. Agreeableness encompasses positive personal attitudes and behaviors such as generosity. Okay, and yes, these are psychology journals. They're all kind of, why are they citing? They aren't citing any psychology papers from, all the psychology papers they're citing are from before 2010, and this paper was published in 2020. That's a pretty big area of research to miss out on. Weird. We find that subjects in product control and product organic show similar levels of Machiavellianism and agreeableness. That's not controlling for them, though. That's not controlling for them. These similarities suggest that differences across product treatments are based on other factors, that is, difference in decision context. That's certainly possible, but that doesn't mean these things don't play a role. A question could be whether self-attribution is critical for the treatment effect we observe. An argument could be made for an alternative driver, that is, subjects' utility functions as concave regarding separate ethical dimensions of products. Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, their hypothesis has been that self-attribution of morality and responsibility, like am I being a good person, is what's driving these effects. But they're saying that it could alternatively just be sort of a cost-benefit analysis in terms of ethics and money. This would imply a lower marginal utility in the organic treatment and lead to lower willingness to pay in a product organic compared to product control. So if it's all about weighing cost and benefit, that means you'd be getting less benefit from switching in the organic treatment than you would in the control treatment, which is, I feel like we kind of were talking about this when we were looking at those results. You're gaining less, or you gain more sort of moral standing when you switch from an unethical towel to a slightly ethical towel than from switching to a slightly ethical towel to a more ethical towel. So, like, that's another alternative explanation. They were saying, their explanation is that you're seeing this effect because you've already kind of bought some morality by having an organic towel, and therefore you don't need to switch to the more ethical towel. But they're saying here, it's like, you're not gaining as much of a benefit by switching. So it's not a morality thing. It's not like, it's an alternative way of thinking about why they found the results they did. A related argument could be that subjects in product organic bunched the ethical attributes differently and therefore were less willing to pay for certified sewing conditions. We thank an anonymous referee for pointing this out. Bunched the ethical attributes differently. The concavity necessaries for that explanation to work would be very high and kind of irrealistic, but textbooks do that with about risk aversion. So I'm so glad. So yeah, thank you, Guy. I really don't fully understand what they're talking about here with concave. Like, I'm trying to figure it out based on my limited knowledge, but I deeply appreciate your insight on it. That's not necessarily not a terribly realistic alternative explanation for their findings. Thank you. Because that's not the kind of insight that I have here, unfortunately. So much appreciated. If subjects in product organic consider organic cotton and certified sewing conditions as part of one ethical factor, so in other words, if they're not seeing them as so this study, they kept saying that we think these things are orthogonal. We think these are two separate ethical concerns. But If they are not separate ethical concerns, if they're related or even the same ethical concern, this would reduce their willingness to pay for individual certificates, although they address very different ethical aspects from a consequentialist standpoint. Yeah, from a consequentialist viewpoint, they might be different because they're having very different consequences, but from a psychological viewpoint, what we know about the psychology of moral judgments, these things are not different. I mean, well, they are different, but they're not super different. These are related things from a psychological viewpoint. From a consequentialist viewpoint, which it seems like they're taking like the possible outcomes of this, these are separate effects. But from a moral psychological viewpoint, in terms of judgments of morality, these are related concepts, and fairly highly related concepts. And thus a question arises as to whether self-attribution significantly affected our results. So do personal judgments of what's going on in morality affect their results? Do people indeed need self-attribution to find some minimally yet plausible excuse to pay less in product organic? Do they need to be making this type of moral judgment? Do they need to be engaging in moral licensing at all for us to see these effects? This question motivated us to run 2 additional treatments, lottery control and lottery. Stop introducing new data in the discussion section. That is not what a discussion section is for. Have you ever heard of study 1 and study 2? Study 3, maybe. May I introduce you to my friend, Study 4? They were so determined to make this a one-study paper that they took what is effectively 3 different studies, treated 2 of them as one study, and shoved the 3rd in the discussion section. Oh my gosh, okay. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. We're gonna do it. Or we're gonna make it through this. Oh my god. Okay. Pain Pecco. If subjects in a this question motivated us to run 2 treatments are similar to the original product respectively, only one difference, much less room for self-attribution. The instructions stress that it's perfectly random regarding whether a subject decides about the towels. In this manner, the subject deciding about organic towels may attribute the fulfillment to ethically relevant criterion less to themselves. I'm full of hatred. I wish they wrote this more comprehensively. Maybe this is perfectly comprehensible to an economist. Like, maybe this is perfectly understandable to an economist. And I imagine it's at least more understandable to an economist, but like, I'm really having difficulty following what they're trying to say they did here, which is not good for a methods section. But again, like, I am not the intended audience here because I'm not an economist, so I am willing to give them like some grace for that. And like I said, my economist friend was seeming to extract more information from this paper than I am, so at least some of my lack of understanding isn't down to their writing. It's just down to I'm not the target audience. I don't necessarily have the prerequisite knowledge. Economists love lotteries and their behavioral experiments, but I doubt it's a good excuse. You know, from what little economics I've read and from what I've heard about my friend's work, lotteries do seem to be very popular because they do make the outcome pretty random, which is a benefit, you know. It's perfectly random regarding whether a subject decides about towels made from a conventional. So they're telling the person what the conditions are. They're telling them what the hey Carbon, how you doing? Good to see you. Economists can be wishy-washy with rigor sometimes, lol. I have feelings about economists, but most of my feelings are based on stereotypes and hearsay. So I like the one economist that I do know, I consider him very rigorous, but of course that's N of 1. I have no idea how that applies to anyone else. But yeah, happy to have you here for whatever is happening here. My slow mental breakdown. My increasingly rapid, but yet still gradual mental breakdown. Accordingly, fulfilling this criterion may not serve as morally relevant excuse anymore, such that subjects may care more about the upgrade to the Fair Wear certificate and about donating to refugees. Real-time descent into madness, it's true. These two treatments were run 19 months after the original, with 50 subjects per treatment. They gave us a sample size! They finally told us the sample size in text. They have 50 people per condition. They have 2 conditions, a total sample size of 100. Unfortunately, we had to exclude one subject in lottery control due to incorrect handling. I would love to know what this means. I'm not saying they wrote this badly, by the way. I just, like, when we're writing a paper and a subject, and like a participant does something weird, we try and be very technical and professional about it. Like in this case, saying incorrect handling in the price list. I want to know what this means. I want to know what this actually means, not for any like empirical reason or any reason for evaluating the how much I trust this paper, but just I feel like there's a story there, It feels like there's a story somewhere in there, and I want to know the story. Do I put I for driven and do insanity before completion of paper into the spreadsheet? Maybe. This is how far we've sunk. We see a sample size and start lapping it up. Zeno time. You're right. I didn't think of it that way, but you're so right. We're at the point where I see a sample size, and that is a breath of fresh air to me, and that is not a great sign. Like, saying the sample size should be the bare minimum. The fact that I'm so excited about a sample size is concerning. I feel like it says a lot about the amount of clarity in this paper. Oh no. But on the other hand, like I said, my friend did assume that the sample size was like 50 per condition. So maybe this is just a standard in economics, and they didn't say it because it's just the standard. This is just what's done, and therefore they don't need to state it because it's kind of the assumption. So maybe, again, maybe this is just that I'm not the audience and I don't have some of the necessary prerequisite knowledge of normal practices and stuff. Maybe that's it. Like, still though. The amount of clarity in this paper is worrying when it's the first thing I hear when I return from practice. Welcome back, Bushi. I hope that practice went well. This paper is making both more and less sense than when you left. In lottery control and lottery organic, the randomness is made salient. Okay, blue and yellow cards are alternately handed. That's not random. That's not random. Okay. Breathe in, breathe out. Next, all subjects within a session receive the same information on the chain of production and, yeah, all this, like, what counts as organic cotton, what fair wear is, all that stuff. So they were giving all the same information. Subjects learn that a random coin toss and the color of the... Okay, so this is more random. Okay, never mind. I was getting worked up before I read the whole thing. Calm down, Mylan. Whether they subsequently decide about towels made of conventional or organic cotton. So they're seeing themselves being randomly assigned to the conditions. Practice was near because it was me and the sensei, but my... Neat, because it was me and the sensei, but my hands feel funny after blocking so many strikes with the wooden sword. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That sounds like it would really do a number on your hands. Like, just your bones getting all jiggled by absorbing all that energy. That sounds like it would make you feel real odd and possibly in pain. I'm sorry. Thus, the design renders the following salient, and so people know that they're being what the two conditions are, and they know that they've been randomly assigned to one or the other. After the coin toss, subjects receive their respective price lists and instructions. See, we've got another appendix. In contrast, in the original product treatments, assignment to the specific treatment is random. The randomness was neither stressed nor visibly demonstrated. So originally, people weren't aware that they were being randomly assigned to conditions. Here, I heard the attrition this paper's had on you, and I'm concerned. You can hear it. It's fine. It's fine. It is somewhat comforting that this is an economics paper, so I can chalk at least some of the, like, things that are making my brain melt up to just, like, a disciplinary difference. It would be worse if this was a psychology paper. If this was a psychology paper, I would be in a considerably worse state. I'm not saying I'm in a good state right now, but it would be worse if it was from a discipline where I could be sure what the norms were. Because I don't know what the norms are in economics, it's not hitting me as hard as it would be. But I'm still struggling. Okay. In contrast, okay. In self-attribution matters, we expect that both moral self-licensing effects should be less pronounced in lottery treatments. I don't I'm like, I get where they're coming from, but I don't know if I'm convinced that this is doing what they think it is. Like, I get why they think it would work. Because if you're aware of the two choices and that the choice that you're making is random, I think I understand why they think that that would help some of this, but I'm not sure if I buy it. That makes sense. We are blissfully ignorant of whether or not this is yikes for econ as it seems, and we don't want to know. Yeah, that about sums it up. Time. Like I know definitively that some of it is definitively yikes for economists because, or for at least one economist, N of one. But there's a lot of other stuff in here that I think is not great that seems acceptable in economics, and there's a lot of stuff in here that I think is not so great that I have no idea how economists feel about it. So we're in a weird state. Also, xenotime. Okay, the mental. I appreciate your concern, but it's okay. Yeah, well, any that's the I talked to one economist, so that's my N equals one. Yeah, so I don't want to overgeneralize from him because I know that he is specifically an economist raised by psychologists. He's not a typical economist. He's yeah, so he's not he probably is not a good representation of the population of economists. Even if the sample size was greater than one, if it was a bunch of like him and people like him, that might not be representative. Anyway, the following simple model describes the approach. We capture the self-attribution from fulfilling the ethically relevant Cotton criteria in the product organic treatment through alpha. This is why I don't like reading economics. Okay, a real economy stuff start here. I see utility and equation. Exactly. I hate economy. I'm sorry. This is a me thing, but I hate economists' need to turn everything into equations, especially when it comes to psychological things. Like I recognize that using statistics, I am turning everything into equations, but like I recognize that this is hypocritical of me, but I find this upsetting. And also making things harder to understand. See, I feel the same knowing that V theorem and the fan base is the closest thing I do to interact with scientists as a legal student. No. Yeah, that's true. V theorem is a very specific type of science person, I think. Science type, as that anime we were talking about in Five Stream yesterday would put it. We are not necessarily representative of all science types. um, Through alpha. What is alpha? I hate you. No. I don't hate. I'm sorry. I'm fine. Everything's fine. In the lottery, in product control in which towels are never made from ethically produced cotton, we set alphas. So they're saying they're accounting for, they're capturing self-attribution. They say they're capturing self-attribution, which to me as a psychologist suggests that they are measuring self-attribution. They're finding some way to measure how much people are attributing these things to themselves. But then they're saying we assume set attribution. So they're saying here that they're capturing it, they're measuring it. But here they're saying, but we decided what it was arbitrarily. Like they're not telling me why they assume. Well, I guess they're assuming that people would assume that their own amount of control in the matter is zero because they were not given control, but that human brains are not rational. See, this is another thing that I have with economists, and like more modern economists in certain areas of economics aren't nearly as like prone to this, but there's this assumption that human beings process information in a rational way. And like logical way and like cost benefit and like no. No, everything we know about psychologists says that human beings are not logical creatures. Our brains are not wired to work in a logical way. We are not even really wired to work in a rational way necessarily, depending on how you define rational. We have rational processing as in we have reasons. They might not be good though. Yeah, like the way that I think about rational and like as psychology thinks about rational, human beings are not good at rational processing. The way Phi is defining it there, yeah, we're doing rational processing. Nothing wrong here. It's microeconomy adjacent stuff. They do worse in optimal tax theory, but modeling the ability to earn income, but a composite number. Oh gosh, yeah, like to me as a psychologist, this pisses me off, but this might seem perfectly reasonable from an economics point of view, and I'm not saying psychology is superior or more knowledgeable in this case. Like, so like I don't know if this is an okay thing to do. I would not consider this like this assuming what is going on in people's heads, I would not consider this an okay thing to do. But depending on the context, depending on what you're trying to achieve, and depending on the background you're coming from, this may seem like a more reasonable thing to do. I know it's instinctual for economists, but please stop randomly assuming every function is linear and you can turn an understandable sentence into an ugly equation. Luckily, the friend economist that I have doesn't assume everything is linear, which is deeply comforting to me. 12 word per minute, 50%. I was afraid that we were going to stay like below one word per minute. I was deeply concerned about that for a long time. Oh man. But fortunately, we are well above what I had feared, and I deeply appreciate that. I read ahead a little and I'm not happy. Cat person right now. Oh no. Okay. In lottery treatments, we assume that it is alpha divided by 2 because subjects know that fulfilling the organic cotton criterion is random and has a probability of 50%. In product organic, alpha is 1. My brain is too dead to understand this. I cannot parse this. Once economists start turning things into equations, I can't do it anymore. Like I can't think this way. Like I feel really bad because my economist friend has had me like read over papers before. He's like sent me manuscripts that he was working on. Like, hey, does this make sense? Can you parse what I'm saying here? Can you understand this? Like, can you read this over for me to make sure that like this makes sense to people other than me? And the second it gets to equations, I cannot understand it. And I have to tell him, I'm sorry, you have to ask an economist to do this. I have no idea what you're trying to say here. This is going, and I think we finally hit the part of the paper where that is going to happen to me. I, especially after reading through all this paper, my brain is not at all in a state where I can even remotely process any of this. Oh my God. If alpha is self-licensing effects, sent you an email. Thanks for letting me. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. I'll check it out after. The next bit makes much more sense to me, at least. Oh, that's comforting. At least, like, I think the fact that this isn't making sense to me is just a me thing. I don't think that this is necessarily the confusing writing rearing its head. I think, like, any confusion from any part that involves equations is just down to me, like, having great difficulty understanding information that's presented this way. And that's not on the authors, that's on me. This is not a way that's conducive to me understanding things. We assume that the utility is separable, so like the benefit, I think utility is like the benefit that people get out of things, is separable between moral and monetary dimensions. So people are getting different benefit or different sort of use out of morality versus money, which I would agree with. I would agree that those two things are orthogonal. I do think that morality and money, at least in this context, because it's not like huge amounts of money or like hugely immoral things, I would consider these things fairly unrelated and separate dimensions. Yeah, I think you're being very generous. I try and be very generous because like I'm sure that people could read some of the papers that I've written and that I've published and they would go like, what the hell is this? You know, like we're all human beings and we're doing our best and we're trying our best to generate new information that's as trustworthy as possible. But at the end of the day, we're human beings. Yeah, I agree with this half of the sentence. Yeah. And quasi-linear in monetary payments. Why? Why? If you want to check it on stream at the end, go ahead. Though I was guessing you'd do that off stream, but I feel like letting you know either way. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. I'll see. I'll see. I'll see if my brain is already mush. The article made me spin for a while. Yeah, generosity is a good thing. Yeah, I think it's very good to you know, like it's like I genuinely think the vast majority of people are just doing their best. The vast majority of people are doing things in a way that they think is right. They are not like most of the time, most people are not actively going out to harm others for reasons that they don't think are good. You know, like, or like, you know, I think most people are genuinely trying to do the right thing. Definitions of what is the right thing will vary wildly from person to person, which leads to a lot of conflict. But I think that everybody is roughly most of the time trying to do the right thing. So I try and give everybody like as much grace as I possibly can, because I think from their point of view, which may differ from mine, they are trying to do the right thing. And at the end of the day, I don't know if there is an objective right thing. Like, as an academic, I don't know if there is an objective correct thing or correct viewpoint in terms of like what is good, what is bad, what is right, or what is wrong. There's just the norms that we live in. There's what benefits me. There's what yeah, anyway. Yeah, taking the antagonist perspective is not just mean. It's just kind of silly. Yeah. Yeah, and I admit I am working on like I do have a tendency to look for flaws in things like especially like when reading papers, I do have a tendency to look for flaws in papers. It's a bad habit of mine, but I'm trying to work on that. And like even if I find a flaw in a paper, I don't most of the time I do not think it's because the authors are intentionally trying to mislead anyone. And I think that's vanishingly rare that people do that. And even when people are intentionally misleading others in, say, academic papers, which is, again, vanishingly rare, I think that they probably think they're doing it for a good reason, if that makes sense. Anyway. Oh god, back to the equations. We assume that utility from receiving monetary amount m and having a moral value of alpha is there or given u. What is u? I get what they were doing with this math, but I don't really get why they're doing it. Economists. I think it's a good habit only when not in excess and with malicious intent. Yeah. They're like this way of thinking can cause problems. U is some function. We assume that U is 3 times continuously. U is utility. Thank you, guy. Thank you, guy. So the utility of utility times a utility. Okay, so the alpha is the self-attribution. Your self-attribution is multiplicatively. Your self-attribution is your utility and your self-attribution interact, and then your monetary the monetary amount you receive is sort of an added bonus on top of that. So like utility and self-attribution are interacting in a way that's greater than the sum of their parts, and then just like m is like some arbitrary amount added on top of that. We assume that utility 3 times continuously differential really just means significantly smooth for anyone in chat. Oh, thank you, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense. I thought they were just choosing a weird letter for their hypothetical. Yeah. Thank you, guy. Thank you for being the economist whisperer in chat. It is deeply appreciated. We assume that u is 3 okay, so according to Xenotime, that means reasonably smooth. We're all reading this paper together, see? The monetary amount times self-attribution that renders the agent indifferent between receiving money or receiving the additional moral value of 1 is given by the monetary amount times self-attribution is equal to the utility of self-attribution plus moral value minus utility times self-attribution. I'm gonna chew off my own arm. I'm gonna be real. I'm just gonna. I want you to imagine an animal in a trap who now has the choice between hoping and waiting for rescue and gnawing off their own limb. Okay. The monetary value of a moral value is equal to the difference in utility between having that moral value or not. It's because it's past your. Hello, Mr. Kitty. Mr. Kitty, stop sitting on my laptop! Oh my god! Thank you, guy. That is the end of spending stats time with economists who are bad. Can we skip this section? Can we skip this section, please? Will you judge me if I skip this section? Can I can I can I can I skip this section? Oh! My economist friend is lurking in chat. Hello, Mr. Kitty. My economist friend is here. Hello, economist friend. It's okay if you don't want to reveal yourself. He has told me on Discord there is a notation error in the paper that is making it even harder to read than usual. I feel somewhat validated, thank you. Hello, economy-san. Economy-san, how do you feel about your new nickname? You can tell me on Discord. Oh god, how long have you been lurking? I'm scared. What have you heard? The anonymous economist? Oh, that rhymes. I like that. Econ, a while. You've been lurking for a while. Great, some reinforcements. The notation error brought me out of hiding. Just see how it is. Oh my gosh. You know, I need to make anonymous economist the VTuber model that I've vaguely on and off discussed with him over the course of like 2 or 3 years, so that I can just throw this paper at him and then he can go explain it. Anonymous economist, if you handle the economics from here on out, I will make you that VTuber model. I did this to myself though, so. Okay, anyway. I'm sorry. Okay. Economy Sensei does not deserve such a horrible punishment. I think he'd enjoy it. I think that he would enjoy it, right? Clearly. I have great faith that he would enjoy it. Or, well, he wouldn't be in as much pain as me. He would get more utility out of it than me. I would be happy to help with such papers, he says. Anonicon. Even when they are bad, he says. Thank you, Anonicon. Anonicon is truly the best. Truly the only economist I trust. Okay, that's a joke. Clearly I trust other economists, but I trust Anonicon at a level that I do not trust any other economist. Oh, good kitty! Kitty is crawling into a paper bag to hide from the economics. Good kitty. He's a good boy. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna skip equations because I do not have the brain for this. I'm sorry. That's good to know, though. Maybe next time I read an economics paper, I'll ask Anonicon if he wants to come on the stream. I was thinking of doing it for this one, and I was like, oh, that's kind of short notice. We have almost reached the point where the paper has taken as long as making the Adventure Time Sidereal. Oh my god, I didn't think of it in that. Oh, that's so bad. But thank you, by the way, Anonicon. I spent like a lot of the first portion of the stream describing your initial insights on the paper that you gave us, and it really helped me understand what was going on. Anonicon says I could hold an honorary traveling scholar position in V theorem. I'd have to ask the other members, but he absolutely can. He's technically my senpai in terms of when he got his PhD. So. He absolutely has an honorary position on this channel as the trusted economist of this channel. In Lottery Organic, the average willingness to pay for controlled manufacturing conditions was €5.49, and it is 4.86 euro. Oh, they're doing a two-sided t-test here. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? That's what we like to see, a two-sided t-test. In Lottery, as hypothesized, the moral self-license. Once again, interpreting the null. I don't know what I expected. Also, holy moly, look at that sampling. Look at that error. I don't know if this is standard error, if this is a confidence interval, what it is, but oh my gosh, look at that error bar on the lottery baseline. Okay, so this is a scale from Is this 0 to 7 or 1 to 7? Like, I know like some statistical programs will automatically start the y-axis at 0, even if it actually starts at 1. But either way, that's taking up, like, that error bar is taking up more than half of the y-axis. Oh my gosh. That's pretty rough. Oof. And that's with 50 people in this sample, because it's 50 people per condition. That's kind of wild. Like, error bars that take up more than half the scale with 50 people. That's pretty wild. What did I do? It's kind of intense. I don't think I've seen something like that before. I wonder what those error bars represent. Oh, there's confidence intervals or standard errors? Because if this is a confidence interval, that's really rough. If this is a standard error, that's really rough. If this is a confidence interval, that's a bit more understandable. But if that's a standard error, ouch. For reference, to calculate a confidence interval, you multiply the standard error by something, so confidence intervals will be bigger than the standard error. That's why it's more distressing if this is a standard error than if this is a confidence interval. Okay. Analogously to product treatments, all subjects in the lottery treatments were offered to share their show-up fee of €2 with local refugees. I have a feeling we're not going to find out unless Anonicon Sensei shares his wisdom. That's fair. Yeah, what do I take with this? Yeah. What do we get out of this? I don't know. There's something, I mean, I think we did have some things that we could take away from the first study, but, yeah. Hello, Mr. Kitty, are you screaming? I don't know if you can hear him, but he's very vocal right now, this cat. Let's see. Okay. In accordance with the hypothesis, the difference was not statistically significant. Once again, at least they were doing a two-tailed test again, so that is comforting. But yeah, the results suggest that moral self-attribution differs if the rule of randomness in the experiment is emphasized. I declare this particular... Okay. I'm just gonna straight up... If hopefully Anonicon Sensei is okay with putting this direct quote in chat. Is that okay, Anonicon Sensei? I have a feeling that we're not going to find out unless Anonicon Sensei shares his wisdom. We can, and he is cute. Oh, I meant it is what... Kimchi. Oh, good. I'm good. He is very cute. He's fine. Okay. Here's the direct quote from Anonicon Sensei. I declare this particular data useless. Those errors are wild. I'm glad this is not just a me thing. I'm glad that it is so validating that you agree. Oh, man. Oh, no. Okay, a direct comparison to the original product treatments elicited 19 months earlier must be used with some caution because, of course, ethical values and the population interest may change. Not that you measured ethical values! I'm gonna eat my microphone. And not that these are the same people either, so... Well, I mean... Notably, the general attitude towards refugees could have changed substantially between these... Do you have any reason to believe so? And do you have ways of testing that? You measured attitudes towards refugees, at least in the first study. If you measured that here, you could test that. Oh, they do test it. I was saying, I was getting worked up again before reading it. Anonicon really rolls off the tongue so well. It really does. It really rolls off the tongue very well. I know Anonicon has another online handle that he likes to use, but I would like to argue for him considering Anonicon in at least some context, because it is just a great name. Which is why we refrain from conducting comparisons between the willingness to share between the product and lottery treatments. But have you considered adding that as a control variable to the model? Reassuringly, though, when we asked our subjects whether Germany should support refugees fleeing from different causes, comparing the product to the lottery treatments, we find no significant differences. Again, interpreting the null, but that is reassuring, though. Like, they didn't find a significant difference, so that is reassuring. Even if, like, it's comforting. It's not saying for sure that these things have stayed the same, but we have no evidence to suggest that they've changed either. This is valid whether refugees are fleeing war, political, or religious, or ethnic persecution. Hunger, insufficient nourishment, or natural disasters, unemployment. So all two-sided t-tests. So I'm glad that they've finally seen the light of the two-sided t-test on a consistent basis. That is comforting to me. We find that compared with original product treatments, the average willingness to pay for controlled manufacturing conditions does not change. Again, Interpreting the null. You don't have enough evidence to say that it changed, but that doesn't mean it stayed the same. When examining at the organic treatments only, however, subjects in the lottery organic are willing to pay significantly more than subjects in product organic. P equals 0.01. Okay. Okay. I really, like, I like that they're giving us the means so that we can compare the means, but I wish they gave us more information on the variability, especially looking at this error bar. And, like, I just want an effect size. I want an effect size. I don't think that's too much to ask. I want either an effect size or the information necessary for me to calculate the effect size. Like, I think that would be really nice. Just give me the pooled variance or a pooled standard deviation and those means, and I can do it myself, okay? Like, please, please. This finding is another indication that subjects care more about additional ethically relevant facts if it is more difficult to attribute the fulfillment of the ethically relevant criterion regarding organic cotton to themselves. See, this is also weird to me because they stated in the first one where they're suggesting that these people have more control. They stated in the first one that that the choice the participants made did not actually have any influence whatsoever on what towel they received. So at the end of the day, the person had pretty much no agency in what towel they actually received in either case. All the moth wants is an effect size. Can you not give it to them, right? I'm the type of moth that is attracted to effect sizes instead of to lights. Just give me an effect size. Just a little Cohen's d. Give me a little Cohen's d. Give me an r squared. I would be happy with an omega squared. You can give me. Just give me a little effect size. Give me an F. You know, that's all I want. I had to talk with my manager. What did I miss? My brain melting out my ears, and also the new idol of the channel, Anonicon Sensei. my economist friend has appeared. Third, an argument could be that other drivers could play a critical role in the original product treatments, or that the effects in product treatments could be driven by increasing attentions when... You know, I actually wonder if the reason that these things are in the discussion is because this is all the result of a reviewer getting kind of like... Because they mentioned here, we thank an anonymous referee for pointing this out. I wonder if they added these studies in the discussion section because a reviewer was like, these are major problems with the paper, I won't let it get published without it. And so they're like, okay, we're gonna do more studies and we're gonna put it in the discussion to make it clear this wasn't part of the original paper. Like, I wonder if that's what's going on here. Where am I? Where was I? Oh, I see the conclusion! The end is in sight! Okay. Maybe subjects no longer focus on what other ethical upgrades are possible for the towel once they learned the first aspect, product production. Isn't that what they were predicting, though, in the introduction? That's kind of what they were suggesting in the intro. No, actually, never mind. I think the introduction was suggesting that after the first ethical thing, any ethical upgrades have decreasing utility. A non-referee sensei. A non-ref? It doesn't quite roll off the tongue quite as much. Still fun. Likewise, subjects may not have paid attention to later donation decisions. However, as a driver, the differences across product treatments, this seems unlikely. How do they know that this is the... Maybe my brain's too much mush. I think that my brain is a bit too much mush for me to come to any more useful conclusions at this point, but we're so close to the end. I am full-on sunk cost fallacy. We are gonna finish reading this paper. Remember at the start of the stream where I was like, I don't want this to last 3 hours? Oops. So much for that. However, as a driver, the differences, notably, instructions were identical in length across product treatments. So basically they're saying that they don't think fatigue would have led to the differences between the original version and... they don't think fatigue led to the results because the instructions were identical length. So they don't think fatigue is a proper explanation. You better get some rest after this one. Okay, I will. I'll get some rest, and I'm gonna eat my chocolate pretzels, and it's gonna be Incredible. I'm going to drink some nice, crisp, cold water. I really need to get in the habit of actually bringing a beverage when I stream. I have not had anything to drink this whole time, and I've been talking for nearly 3 hours straight because I make bad decisions and I am bad at estimating how much time it's going to take me to stream. um, all subjects learn that about cotton production first, and then conditions for sewing sector, and then approximately half an hour later about so it's not counterbalanced, is kind of what they're saying. And yeah, it's not counterbalanced at all, and there shouldn't be differential effects of like fatigue or differential order effects between conditions, because all of this stuff is constant between conditions. I always manage to finish my beverage before the stream starts. Feel free to go hydrate anytime. Thank you. Do I need to bring you an iron flask? No, I have plenty of water bottles. I just don't use them. Fourth, further research in different contexts is necessary to explore how general moral self-licensing effects are that we documented in the study. So they want to see if this generalizes to other contexts, not just buying towels. Not related to iron fish. Maury's beloved iron fish. I had never heard of orange or iron fishes before Maury brought them up to me a few years ago, and it's an interesting thing. Apparently, you put them in water and you boil them. It's an iron fish, and you put it in water that you boil and like use to make other things or something, and it infuses it with iron so that you can get more iron in your diet or something like that. I forget the exact. I don't know. It's kind of fun. Anyway, of course, as the first step, further research should also vary the design we use. That is, allow subjects to decide about the certified cotton instead of fair wear. That's right, because the only thing that increased the ethics of the towel was whether it was fair wear or not. In the same condition. 23 minutes till we cross the AT side dairy model length. Please. Another important follow-up focus could be market analyses, because maybe for firms offering products that fulfill exactly one ethical criterion, for example, ecological cotton and textile items, is a smart strategy for selling products to customers with easy-to-use ethical concerns. But they still saw additional benefit from having two ethical aspects. Like maybe there's diminishing returns as you add more and more ethical aspects to a product, but you still do see some additional benefit by adding more ethical aspects to a product, right? Or am I misremembering that? I think I'm misremembering that. Never mind. Further possibility is leaving moral wiggle room. See Dana et al. Is that Dana Carney? No, that's an economist. Vanderweel. This is a working paper. This isn't even peer-reviewed. This isn't even completed. They're citing a working paper from 2014 in a paper that's published in 2020. Why are they citing a paper that was a working paper in 2014 and not replacing it with a peer-reviewed citation when this came out in 2020, 6 years later? Why? Anonacon Sensei's typing. I don't know if he has insight on this or not. Bartling et al. Economic Review. Grossman. Management. Grossman, Vanderweel. Economic. Evidence on the refugee crisis. Citing working papers is much more common in economics. Some econ papers take literal decades to publish. Okay, thank you. That's some great insight. Thank you so much. Peer review in economics is really slow. Oh, thank you, Guy. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you both for that clarification. Still, though, like, I couldn't... If I was citing empirical research, there's no way, like, people would be okay with me citing something that hadn't been peer-reviewed. I could get away with, like, citing non-peer-reviewed things if they were never expected to be peer-reviewed, like, if they're not empirical work, but in psychology, like, that would not fly. But it's interesting to know that it does in economics as, like, a thing about, like, how slow peer review is, and therefore, like, if you want to cite more recent research, you have to cite older papers kind of deal, or, like, papers that aren't peer-reviewed. Journal of Ec. Oh dear. Oh, are we back? It looks like OBS disconnected for a second there. Why are they only citing economists when they're talking about psychological concepts? Am I a joke to you? Are we jokes to you? you're using our concepts, but you're not citing us. And you're using your concepts in ways that don't make sense, in the ways that they're conceptualized, and then you're not citing us, which suggests that you don't actually understand what the concept is. 15.24 words per minute, kind of common in behavioral economy, don't know for marketing. That's fair. Is this appropriation? I'm fine with cross-discipline collaboration and cross-discipline citation, but this is just like upsetting to me because like they're not citing psychologists for psychological concepts. Like this, if this was specifically the economics version of motivated reasoning or the economics version of self-licensing and they had their own term for it, because these are the way that they're describing it is not what we mean by that in psychology. And we're the ones who coined the term. So it upsets me that they are using our term for a separate construct and only citing the other people within. It almost has vibes of like somebody a long time ago read one psychology paper, didn't fully understand it, but cited that concept in an economics paper with like a not quite there definition. And then just everybody's just citing that incorrect definition. That's kind of the vibes I'm getting from this. And I mean, it's normal to mainly cite within your own discipline. It's normal for economists to cite it. Other economists and psychologists to cite other psychologists. But like, if you're using a concept from another discipline, at least cite people from those disciplines. You know, like, I don't know. It just, maybe this is just me, because like, in the stuff that I study, I'm constantly citing people from many different areas. I am citing people from psychology. I'm citing people from political science. I'm citing people from anthropology. I'm citing people from communications. Like, for me, it's very, very normal that I would be citing a bunch of different papers from a bunch of different authors in a bunch of different areas of academia. But maybe that's not so much like, I recognize that my experience is very much not the norm, so maybe I'm having a stronger reaction to this because I'm kind of the exception to the rule. As far as academia is concerned, that could be it. I don't know. Anyway. This potential interaction of moral self-licensing and other well-known mechanisms, providing moral excuses, is also a topic of future research. Fair enough, yeah. Fair enough, fair enough. I do think that motivated reasoning could absolutely help provide a moral excuse. Like that's very consistent with more like motivated reasoning is a very consistently that's very consistent with my understanding of it. And like I'm fairly familiar with motivated reasoning because it's a major factor in my own research. Citing Econ Sensei, yeah. I haven't cited Econ Sensei or Anonacon Sensei before because Anonacon Sensei's area of research is very, very different from my area of research. Not just like in terms of discipline, but in terms of like the topics we study are very, conceivably there could be a connection between them, but they are like way in different areas. Is there equivalent to what he's doing in psychology? Yes. Am I anywhere near that area of psychology? No. And the same is probably true for vice versa. Is there equivalent of what I'm doing in economics? Probably yes. Is he anywhere close to that area of economics? Probably no. Similar deal, you know? So I've never cited him, and I doubt he'll ever cite me, and that's just probably how it's going to be. Unless we ever do get that collaboration off the ground, which we've been talking about it for 4 or 5 years now, and it hasn't really gone anywhere, so I doubt that's going to happen. It would be cool, though. Anyway, our data documents that people behave as if they're strong substantive for... So you're saying strong, but you haven't given me any effect sizes. You haven't given me effect sizes, and I have reason to believe your effect sizes would be fairly small, given those error bars, you know? So don't say strong if you don't know if it's strong. Small p-values does not mean a strong effect. Those are completely different things. Between ethically relevant, do you know they're ethically relevant? You didn't measure if these things are ethically relevant to the participants who are actually giving you this information. Non-correlated, these are not necessarily non-correlated. Again, you assumed that they were non-correlated, but you did not test that. And there's a lot of data in psychology suggesting that those would be correlated. Product dimensions. Our data thus suggests that static moral self-licensing exists. Okay, this part I am at least somewhat convinced on this. I do think that there are credible alternative explanations for the finding that their say supports this, but I do think that they have at least some data that could suggest that this is the case. This first sentence, I am not at all convinced. I think that this is based on a lot of assumptions that they never tested. This second sentence, I think they have more convincing evidence for this. I think that there are possible alternative explanations that they could have ruled out that they did not rule out, but I think that this is more convincing. Fulfilling one ethical dimension in a product choice seems to ease moral conscience later, unrelated to yet morally relevant context. I am somewhat convinced on this, but again, they did not actually test morality. Like, at no point did they measure. The closest they got was Machiavellianism, which is not really there. It's related, but it's not quite what they needed to do to convince me. Thus, different aspects of moral self-licensing. Again, you didn't measure morality, so you can't say this is moral self-licensing. And static across morally relevant dimensions at one point in time. Again, I don't know if these are morally relevant because you didn't measure that. There are validated measures of moral relevancy, but they did not use them. They didn't measure that. Well, it's not really their job to test morality. Oh, sorry, I started reading that before. Yeah, the thing is, like, is it their job to test morality? No, but they're saying that these things are morally relevant without backing that up. They're assuming that this is morally relevant, and that's what's getting to me. Like, I'm not saying, is this objectively moral? No, that's irrelevant to the question. It's whether people think this is moral, and the authors seem to think this is moral, but they have no evidence that the participants did. And we have a lot of evidence in psychology that different people will disagree on whether these things are moral or not. So it's that's what's getting me worked up. Sorry, guy. Sorry, I should have given you more time to do what you need to do. Over different points in time seem to coexist. Like, I think there's something here. I do think that they have something here, but I think that their data is not... I don't really trust their statistics all that much, and I don't think that they have adequately ruled out alternative explanations or adequately confirmed that they're studying what they think they're studying, if that makes sense. The outsiders were not observed to infer that moral self-licensing could occur. That's fair. I think that they do have good evidence for this. As far as they determine moral self-licensing or just self-licensing in general, I think that they have decent evidence for this, or at least they don't have any evidence to the contrary. Again, I don't want to imply that they have found no difference in those groups, because we can't test the null. They didn't test the null. They can't test the null. They can't draw a conclusion from a non-significant effect. But I will say that they don't have any evidence to the contrary of this. They don't have any evidence contradicting this, so I'll give them a pass on that. Although monetarily incentivized to make accurate estimates, subjects were observed to be completely oblivious to effects of moral self-licensing, both static and dynamic. I will say, yeah, again, this first part of the sentence, absolutely convinced. Although the subjects were monetarily incentivized to make accurate guesses, they were not accurate. I'm convinced on that. I'm convinced on that. The second half, I guess I'm getting a bit more semantic, but I'm not as convinced by the second half of this. Therefore, it may have value for social and political debates on the potential effects of moral self-licensing. Firms know better than ordinary customers about the effects of moral self-licensing and other... Do they? Do they? Because you never tested whether firms know this. Are they talking about, like, marketing teams? They did cite some researchers in marketing departments and stuff like that up there, so... I don't know. Maybe I need to be reading between the lines a bit more. Maybe this is something that they didn't spell out here. Normally, I'd say that they probably didn't have a lot... They were missing a lot of detail in the paper because of the word count restrictions. Like, you know, how they didn't actually describe their control condition here, and we had to go to the supplement. Normally, I'd chalk that up to word count restrictions, but I published in this journal. They don't have word count restrictions. So that's not an explanation for it. So that's a little weird. Firms know... Providing such excuses to customers may be a profitable approach. So I agree that, like, making a product look ethical, and I think they provided good evidence that making a product look like it is organic or good for the environment or had fair labor practices. I do agree that they have shown evidence that this can be exploited for profit. I do think that I am convinced on that by this paper. And if so, political and societal debate should be aware of these mechanisms. And yeah, greenwashing, exactly. I think they've shown evidence for potential benefit to companies in greenwashing their products here. I am convinced about that. They haven't tested whether political and societal debate would work here, but that's an avenue for future research. Maybe that's what they meant by saying this. They should be aware of these mechanisms. They haven't shown that this is an actual like effect, but I think this is, if we interpret this as, if so, we should look at this in these contexts. I think that's a very fair thing to say. I think it would be interesting to look at those things in those contexts. Yeah. It's done. We made it. And I'm not going to read the supplement. We've read enough of the supplement. I'm not going to read any more of the supplement. I think, is the supplement entirely like their materials? Oh, here's where they actually give us information on the sample. Look, here's their demographics. Oh my gosh. Total number of, they had, oh, this is across all of the data they reported. So this isn't actually per study. This is like across all the studies. But yeah, we did it. We survived. We made it. Good job, team. I can't believe you all stuck with me. Thank you all so much for sticking with me through that. Oh, man. Oh, that's interesting. Can you give me some standard deviations, please? Can you give me any measure of variability in here besides range at all? Like, this could have been like, oh, whatever. It doesn't matter. We made it. Oh, thank you. I think, and thank you for suffering through this. I actually had a lot of fun. Like, was I suffering? Yes. Was I having fun with the suffering? A little bit. I think if I was reading it on my own, it would have been a lot more painful, but having all of you in the chat and then having Guy and Anonicon Sensei around to help clarify some of those things, I think made me enjoy it considerably more than if I was just reading this on my own. I was worried that was going to break the spreadsheet, but it lines up perfectly with a random data point I took last week. Yay! Land at last! Jumps on ship and kisses the floor. Big mood. I'm going to go pet the cat and shove my face in the cat's fur and maybe take a nap. I think that sounds like a great idea. I think we can absolutely... I think it's good to take a good nap. 15.2 words per minute. Not as good as I did last time, I don't think. But, you know, not that bad. More detail. More detail. Oh, this seems like part of a consent form? Determination and payment. Consent form. Yeah. Yeah, no, it was fun. It was fun. I really enjoyed reading this with all of you, and I'm looking forward to reading more papers with all of you in the future. Oh, maybe I should check my email. Actually, no, this sounds like a good opportunity to check my email, and then I'm going to end stream and go get a big glass of water. Okay, let's check the email. Oh, I don't see anything there. Maybe it's just, it might be processing, but I'm not seeing anything in there. Maybe it went to my spam folder. No, there's nothing there. Weird. Another study on students. I hope it was published in a psychology journal. Ooh, that sounds, yeah. No, this one was published in a well, no, this one was published in PloS One. This journal is PloS One. PloS One is sort of like open disciplinary. So like pretty much any discipline. Like if you look at the, oh. Wow. PloS One is multidisciplinary. Gonna go sleep because it's my birthday. I don't need to sleep well, Astrologipos, and have a happy birthday. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care and have fun. But yeah, no, this is PloS One. It's not a psychology journal, but it's not an economics journal either. Let me browse topics in PloS One because it's ridiculous. That was a roller coaster, but a really fun one. I'm glad. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Now I see it. I see. Okay, I see the email. Just came through. Fate. I'll have to read this in more detail later, but I'm so down to talk about Fate. Oh, man. I would love to do Fate stuff. Sent the spreadsheet data from this stream and last to Discord. Oh, thank you so much. I'll take a look at it. Yeah, happy birthday, Astral. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming to this stream. Mike, I'm going to look over this email. I am delighted to talk about, for any excuse to talk about fate. So I'll see if I can make these work. And yeah, take care, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And I'll see you whenever I see you next. I don't know when I'm going to see you next, but hopefully it will be soon. Take care, everyone. Have a great night or a great day, where whatever time it is. Bye.